Hey everyone, welcome back. So in this particular video, we are going to cover Node.js testing in details. Now before we'll discuss the curriculum, tell me one thing, that how many videos that you will find on YouTube that is covering testing in details? Almost zero. Most of the times you need to buy a paid course from Udemy or maybe from some other platform. So that is the reason I've decided to create two video parts. So this will be part 1 and then there will be part 2. And what is the reason? Now I'll see that I usually don't mention these kind of things, but from last 3 to 6 months my channel is almost like down by 60 to 70%. So if this part 1 of this particular testing series does well, or maybe it gets good response from all of you, in that case I'm going to create a part 2. So let's see what are the things that we are going to cover. And also for this particular video I'm targeting at least 1000 to 2000 likes and 100 to 200 comments. So it's my humble request, so please like this video, comment down, and if you can share with your friends, it will be very helpful. So in the part 1 we are going to cover the fundamentals of jest, mocks, spies and async testing. Okay, so we'll start with that what is actually testing and what we are working with, how you can set up testing using TypeScript from scratch. Then we move to section 2. We are going to understand testing utilities and pure functions, right? We'll understand what is describe, it, expect and all the basic matcher. Then we'll move to section 3. We are going to cover jest function and jest mock in details. Moving to the next one, which will be section 4, we are going to cover services and spies, which is very important. And then we are going to cover async testing and promise rejection. And at the end, we are going to end this part 1 with understanding the concept of beforeEach and afterEach. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is very simple or small, but actually this is not. Once you will cover or watch this complete video, you will understand each and everything that you need to know so that you can start the part 2. So what will be in the part 2? So in the part 2, I'm going to cover API testing, integration testing, coverage and CI. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some of the overview that we are going to cover integration testing, routes, controllers, right? How you can test CRUD operations, how you can test database shading and cleanup. Also, I'm going to show you that how you can test auth protected routes, right? Let's say you have a user and admin role, how you can test all those features. Then we'll move to coverage reports and test quality, and at the end we are going to end with GitHub Action CI. Now as I already mentioned that if I get good response from the part 1, then only I'm going to create the part 2. Okay, and also you can download the source code from my website, that is completely free. I've added the link in the description. So with that, now let's get started and good luck. Alright, so now we'll get started. Okay, so first of all, what are you going to do, right? So this will be one of the beginner section where we are going to understand some of the basic concepts. Like without this it will be very difficult. So what we are going to do, so we'll be having two parts. Okay, so in the second part, what we are going to do, we are going to have a project. So project will be basically, it will be on Node, Express and Mongo, as I already mentioned in the intro. But before we are going to write all those test cases, you have to understand the concepts, right? For example, let's say what is the concept of matchers, what is mock, right? What is jest.spyOn, so all these things. So that is the reason what I've done, right? I already created a basic project with all the concepts that we are going to learn. So each and every file is actually will be one particular concept. Okay, so I just wanted to explain all of this before we will start writing. Also you can see that I already created a tsconfig.json. You are going to download all of this from my source code. It is completely free. So what you're going to do, right? So now we are going to create our test cases. Before that, first we need to understand some of the things which is very important. Okay, so now first one will be that why actually testing we need to do, right? That why testing actually matters or what testing actually solves. Now first of all, you have to understand that whenever you're creating any kind of software, right? So let's say your software is growing, small changes can break your old behavior. So let's say you are a developer and you want to update a particular function, or let's say you want to rename that function to something else, or you want to refactor some particular logic. What will happen, right? There is a possibility that some of the older logic stop working. Now if you don't have any test cases, maybe let's say unit test cases, right? What will happen, you're going to, let's say, deploy that code and it breaks, and then you have to again debug that one manually. You'll be very late, or maybe you're going to check this one after you're going to do products and release. So there are a lot of things. Okay, now this is actually what testing solves, right? So testing is basically tell you that, okay, this is what we need to write, or sorry, not write, means this will be our expected behavior in our particular code, right? And this is what we are going to write, or we are going to recap in our test file, something like that. So if I want to sum up in a very simple way, so test will be that, okay, I have this input, so for this particular input this function should return this particular output, as simple as that. So for this input, or for a particular input, the function should return a particular output. Okay, so this is what your testing is going to do. If that promise breaks, so that means what will happen, your test library, let's say we are using jest, it's going to show us immediately, okay, something goes wrong. Okay, so now there are three types of test we need to understand. One is unit test case, then you have integration test case, and then we have E2E, right? E2E means end-to-end test cases, right? Like this, all the companies, any product you are working, you will see that mostly you are going to have these three test cases. What is unit test cases? So let's understand all these concepts very simple way. So unit test case will be, unit test case checks one small piece of logic in your code, and that actually we are going to check in isolation. Okay, this is very important, right? So what unit test is going to check, one small piece of logic in isolation. For example, let's say I have a function where I'm doing a label formatter, right? So I am getting a input, label as input, and then I'm doing certain operation, and at the end I'm returning a label, returning the same label, but I'm just adding some formatting. So this will be a label formatter. So in that case I want to write a unit test case which is only going to test that particular function. Okay, so this will be your unit test case. Second is integration test case. Now integration test case is going to check that whether multiple parts of your application is working together correctly or not. Now I'm going to give you a best example. Let's say in our second project we are going to have what, routes, controllers, services. So we are going to combine all of this, and we are going to check that, okay, whether our routes logic along with our controller, along with our service, all these logics are working or not. Or maybe let's say we have a validation logic and the business logic, we are clubbing together, and that will be our integration testing, right? Or there is a function, that function is calling function B. Okay, so this will be an integration test where we are going to check multiple parts actually working together or not. And end-to-end test is very important. End-to-end test is going to check your full app flow or full application flow like a real user. Now what will be the example? Let's say we are going to open our app, we are going to sign in, we are going to fill the form with the values, we are going to click on submit, and then we are going to see the final success message, right? So this will be your end-to-end test flow, right? Now one thing you need to understand, that where actually all of this actually helpful, all these test cases, right? So unit test is going to helpful when you want to first check on small logic. Okay, integration testing is going to help you when you're going to check or when connected parts often fail together. And end-to-end test cases will be when you want confidence. Alright, so my users or my B2C users are going to use my application, so I have to be confident before I'm going to release that particular feature. So in that case you need to do an end-to-end test case, right? So that you have that confidence that, okay, now I'm in a good position that I can release this particular application. So this is the three parts. So you have unit test, integration test, and end-to-end test. Alright, so now what we will do, right? So let's install the packages that we need. Okay, so I'm going to explain that why we need all of these packages. So I'm just going to do npm install -d, and first we need, I think I don't have the TypeScript. Okay, we need to install TypeScript first. Then we are going to install jest. Then we need something called ts-jest. I will explain that why actually we need all of this. We also need the types, so I'll do types/jest, and also we need types/node. Okay, so first one, jest. So jest will be our test runner. That is going to do what? That is going to find, and it is going to execute your test file. So for example, let's say I'm going to have my test folder here. Jest is going to find that particular folder where this particular user created the test files, and based on that it is going to execute. What this ts-jest is going to do, this is going to help us that, okay, or this is going to help not us, this is going to help jest understand TypeScript files. Okay, so that is the reason we have ts-jest. So this is going to help jest to understand the TypeScript files. Then you have the types/jest. So this is nothing but your this is going to give the TypeScript type support for your jest function. So we have different types of function that we are going to understand. For example, let's say describe, test, expect, all these things. And then we have the types/node, which is going to give TypeScript type support for Node.js. Okay, so these all the things we need. Now let's install all these. Alright, so now you can see that the installation is completed. So let's go to the tsconfig.json, and you can see that some of the properties that I wanted to explain. That first one is the target, which simply describes that TypeScript is going to compile to this particular JavaScript version. Okay, then you have the module. Next we have strict. Now strict true is actually important, so this is going to make what? It's going to make TypeScript safer. Okay, then you have types node comma jest. So what actually this is doing, right? This is going to make jest globals and the node types available. All right, also we are simply telling that include source comma test. So what we are simply telling that, okay, we are going to include, simply going to tells TypeScript that you have to look inside the source folder and the test folder. Okay, I hope this is clear. So now this is done. What we need to do right now, we need to create our jest config file. So first what I'm going to do, right, I'm simply going to do npx. All right, now we have installed ts-jest, you remember, and here what I'm going to do, right, we need to create the config. So I'll do config, so I'll do config :init, enter, and you can see that this is going to create a jest.config.ts. Now here you can see that we have a couple of properties. Now I already created some, so let me just copy this and then I'll just paste it here, and I'll explain that what actually we are doing here. Now first of all, you have to understand that why actually you need this particular config file. Now here we have something called a preset, right? I already mentioned that why we are using this ts-jest. Now this is going to tell our jest that you have to work with TypeScript. Now this is important, so that is the reason we have this particular preset. Okay, then we have something called test environment, right? So now test environment is actually here node, so node is correct for a Node.js project, so that is the reason we are using a test environment, right? Root is going to tell that where your test files is going to live. So for example, our root directory is /test, means once I'm going to create a test folder here, so this is going to understand that, okay, this is the folder where I have written all the test files. All right, and collection coverage, you can see that this is nothing but this is going to tell jest that which source file we are going to measure to coverage, right? So for this one we are going to use all the .ts file. I hope this is clear. Okay, so now what you're going to do, right, go to package.json and let's remove this, and we need to add some scripts here. Okay, so I'm just going to add a test will be jest. Also let's add a test coverage also. I'll do test coverage, and for this one I'm just going to jest-fn coverage. Okay, I think this is fine. What else we need? I think this should be fine. So now we can start writing our test cases and understand all the concepts that we need to know. So first what I'm going to do, right, so let's go here. As I already mentioned, we need to create a test folder, right? This is where it will understand that this is the place where we have written all the test files. So I'm just going to create a test folder. Okay, so now go to your source. Now this is our first test file. Okay, so first what I'm going to do, so first we need to create a test file here. So what will be the extension? So here I'm just going to give the same name. So I'll do 01-first -test. Now we need to give .test. So you're simply telling that this is a test file, and now I'm just going to do ts. Okay, all right, so first let's go to this code, and we need to understand that what actually this function is doing, because see, we can't blindly write all these test cases. This you can simply do in ChatGPT also, right? That is not the point of creating this particular video. If you want to become a good developer, you need to understand test concepts, right? How you can write unit test cases. Now if you think that writing test cases is simpler, you are doing a huge mistake. I'm telling you, like, I will be very honest, writing test cases can be very tricky. Okay, right now there are ChatGPT, Claude and those things, people can easily write all of this. That is not the point. That is only applicable to the person they have already written. For example, let's say I'm writing test cases for all my companies before. ChatGPT came, maybe this ChatGPT and AI boom came from 2024 maybe or 2023. But before that also I used to write test cases. So that time whatever errors and everything we used to get, we have to go to Stack Overflow, read all the blogs, read the official documentation and write the test cases. So I hope you understand that what I mean. That if you think that if you're a fresher, or let's say you have less than 5 years of experience, and you'll think that, oh, I have ChatGPT, if I'm working in a company, you will be able to write test cases or generate test cases like this, like in 1 minute, you're doing a mistake. Because what will happen, right, this is going to make you less dependent. This is what you don't want to do. Okay, even though those tools can write test cases very easily, still even if you write test cases, right, there will be some errors. So what I mean by this here, that human work is needed. Whatever tools came, right, so let's say if I'm writing some test cases, right, there is a possibility that I'm going to get some errors, right? So at the end I need to fix those errors. So now if you don't have any idea, you have never worked with Jest, you only dependent on AI tools, this will be a huge problem for all of you. So what I mean by this, that take all this video, that whatever you're going to learn very seriously. Okay, because writing unit test cases, integration test cases is a skill. Okay, and you have to master it, and then once you master, you'll be able to at least write some of the test cases, or even not write. Let's say if I'm going to give you a test case file and you will be able to understand that what is happening here, then also I can say that, okay, now you are in a good position, you can use AI tools to generate test cases, and then if you're getting any error, those errors you should be able to fix by yourself, right? So now first let's see that what is happening here. So in this particular function, we'll see that we have very simple logic. We have a function, we are getting this as the input. We are simply telling that if this is 0, this is sold out. If the seat count is 1, only one seat is left, and then at the end we are going to return that how many seats are left. Okay, similarly here what we are doing, that we have a function, we are receiving input is paid user, this is a string. Okay, at the end it's going to return a type is a string, so you can see that it's returning a string. So for example, you just simply can't return number here, it's going to give you error, the number is not assignable to string, right? So that means this is going to receive a boolean and it's going to return a string. If it is paid user, access granted, or else payment required. So now let's start writing our first test case. Okay, so first what you need to do, right, so you need to understand two things, that we are going to understand something called describe, and also you're going to understand something called it. Okay, so first this describe is going to do what? So this is going to use, or this we are going to use to group related test. Okay, so I'm just going to give here, this is to use to group related tests. Okay, so this is the first thing. Now how this is going to help you? Now your jest file, let's say we are having a 2 function, you can have 50 function here. So this is going to help you to become more organized. Also it will increase the readability. So readability in the sense that, let's say you're working in a team, it will be easy for other developers also to read. Okay, second will be your jest output also becomes easier to read. Okay, so that is the reason you use this describe. What this it is going to do, so it actually going to define one particular test. Okay, I'm just going to give define one test case. This is also important, right? So whatever we are going to write inside it, it's simply going to tell that, okay, this is one particular test case, or in this particular test case I'm basically testing one particular scenario, something like that, right? So now let's say how we are going to do that. And also we have something called, I think I forgot, we have something called test also. Now you can use test or it. Test also do the same job, so I'm just going to do does same job as it. So both are same, either you can use it or you can also use test. Okay, means both are completely valid and both is going to do the same thing. So now what are you going to do, right? So here in the first function we have what? See, whenever you're writing test case, right, you need to understand. Now I can't teach you everything, right, everything in the sense like what your thinking process is. For example, in this particular function, if you see here, what will be your thinking process, that what are the scenarios you have to test. First, you can simply understand, if I see here, right, I'll understand that, okay, I need to give one condition that whenever my seat will become 0, this is going to return me sold out. So this will be my one condition. Second will be, if my seat count is 1, it's going to return only one seat left. So this I can see. Okay. Now the very important. So I'm going to write one more test case, is that what if the seat count is greater than 1? So in that case, I'm going to return another test case, right? So what I mean by this, right, you need to understand whenever you're going to write any test case or you're testing one particular function, maybe you have only written that particular function. So you need to see the base use case, that what actually that function is doing. Second, you also need to cover the edge use case. Edge use case means what that function is not doing, but actually indirectly that condition can affect that particular function. So for example, here we have, if the seat count is 0, if seat count is 1, but on the other use cases, when the seat count is greater than 1, it can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah blah, whatever, this is going to return this particular message, right, or output. So this is what test is all about. If you are writing a particular function, you should be able to understand that, okay, these all are the scenarios I need to cover. So now let's see how we are going to do that. First, what I'll do, right, so I'm just going to take a describe here, and I'm simply going to tell that, okay, this is going to test this particular function, get enrollment message. I'm just giving in short. Right now, what I'm going to do right here inside this, now this will be my group. Now whatever I'm going to write test cases for this particular function, get enrollment message, I'm going to write inside this describe only. Okay, so what I mean by this, now let's say for this particular function also I need to write test case. So in that case, for this function, I'm not going to write test case inside this describe. Instead, I'm going to take one more describe here. So now simply I'm telling that, okay, I had two function and I've taken two describe, and inside this, now what we're going to do, we are going to write all the test case. Now here I already mentioned, either you can take test or you can test it also, both. Okay, so now let's start with writing the first one. So first one will be what, so I'm just going to do, so let's take it only, or maybe let's do test only. So here I'm simply telling that, okay, this is going to returns what, sold out, right? So it's going to return sold out. So it's going to return sold out when seat count is 0, right? This is what it's doing. So now how you're going to write test cases here. So first of all, we need to get the result. So result means I need to call this particular function. Result means what result it's going to return. So here I'm just going to take const result, and then I need to call that particular function. So get enrollment message. And here what you have to pass. Now this is very important. You are doing a testing, right? You have to pass a dummy data here. You're simply testing a scenario when the seat count is 0. Now this function is receiving an input, so that means you have to pass an input here. So what input do you need to pass? 1? No, you have to pass 0, because you are testing a test where you are simply telling that I'm only testing this particular test case, seat count should be 0 in that case only, so you have to pass 0 here. If you are passing 0, so this function is going to receive 0 and it's going to return this particular input. Then only it will make sense, right? So now what you need to do, right? So this is done, but you need to tell jest that, okay, now I've called this particular function. Jest needs to expect something. What it needs to expect? It needs to expect this exact output this function is returning, right? So how you're going to do that? So that is the reason you have something called expect. Okay, now this expect is going to do what? You can see that this expect function is used every time you want to test a value, right? So now here you have to pass, so what value you want to test? Result. So you have to pass result, and then you are simply going to tell that this result to be, now see, you have so many things here, okay, to equal, to have been called once, multiple times, nth time, so many things. You can't cover each and everything, but most important ones we are going to cover. And then you also have to, you don't have to do like memorize, right? So in Hindi you have something called, right, ratta. You don't have to memorize each and everything, right? You should be able to in a good position to understand that which method you are going to use. If not, go to official documentation and search. You don't have to memorize. I always mention these things multiple times. Also, some of you call, like write comments that how you memorize all of the. I don't. When I record the video, that time maybe I've already created this particular project and I'm taking reference, right? But in real scenario, let's say I'm working in a company project or whatever, freelancing project, whatever I'm doing, let's see if I'm stuck, right? I will be going to the official documentation and I will see. It's not about memorizing, it's about understanding and then how you're going to apply. Okay, so here I'm just going to do 2b, and then you're simply going to tell, so this has to be, let's say I'm just going to give this one as 100. Okay, and we'll see what is happening here. So I'll save this. Now what I'm going to do, right, so let's go here and then simply just do npm run test. Okay, and let's see what is happening here. Now see that it's immediately failed. So it's simply telling that you can't receive 100. It's actually expecting to receive sold out, because this is what it's simply telling here, right? It's returning sold out when this is 0. So that means what you need to do here, I need to simply tell that, okay, this has to be sold out. Okay, this is important. So now I can save this, and now I'm just going to do clear, and let's run again, and one passed, fine. Now what I'm going to do, right, notice I'm just going to do 10 here. Now what will happen if this function receives 10? What is going to happen? This is going to receive 10 seats left, correct? So this should fail. So let's see what is happening here. I can see, so you are expecting to receive sold out, but it's actually receiving 10 seats left. Because why? You have explicitly passed 0 here, 10 here, but you are testing a scenario where it is seat count is 0, because you simply tell that if we are passing seat count is 0, this expect has to be sold out. So that means what I mean by this, indirectly I'm explaining that you can't pass wrong input and then you expect a correct output. It will not happen, right? You have to pass a correct input, then only you're going to receive a correct output. So now I can clear this, and then I'm just going to run once again, and you can see that this passed. So this will be the first one. Now see, first few test cases I'm going to take little slowly, and then we are going to do fast. Now you can see that you can do easily. Now I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm just going to paste it here, and I'm simply going to do, it is going to return one seat left, only one seat left, when the seat count is 1. So when the seat count will be 1, you have to pass what? 1, and then you are going to expect what? Only one seat left. That's it. And if you save this and let's run once again, and we'll see what will happen. 2 will be passed, right? So you can see that 2 passed, right? So now you can see how many test suits you have. 1. So you have 1 test suit, and you have 2 test cases inside that, right? So 1 test and the second one, this one. Now I'll pause the video and try to do the next scenario, which will be when it is more than 1, right? So it will be plural use case, right? So in that case it will be what? If you're passing 10, it will be 10 seats left. You're passing 100, it will be 100 seats left. So that you should be able to do by yourself. So what you need to do is copy this, and then I'm simply going to do return more than 1 seats left when seat count is greater than 1. And now I'm just going to pass 11, so it's going to return what? 11 seats left. So copy this, and it is going to return 11 seats left. And if you save this and let's run once again, so 3 passed. Okay, so this is what you're going to write your very basic test case, right? Remember, this is not basic. This is actually you're learning a lot of important things. For example, what is describe, how you're going to write a test case. You can also take this one as it also. Okay, and then how you're going to call a particular function, what input you need to pass, that is the important thing, and what you're expecting from this particular result to be the result that you're returning from that particular function. Okay, so with this, now let's write these particular test cases in the next part. Alright, so now writing this one, it will be easier, right? This will have only 2 conditions. One, if this paid user is false, we are going to return this. If it is true, we are going to return this, right? So then we are going to do what? I'm going to take test, and I'm simply going to do returns, and then what we are returning, we are returning access granted, correct? So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm simply going to do, it's going to return access granted when the user is paid. Okay, and then what you're going to do, so again you're going to take a result. So I'll do const result, and this will be get. So we have the get course price level, no sorry, get course access message, and here you're going to pass a input which will be either true or false. So if this is true, so in that case again we are going to expect the res to be, and then you are going to return the access granted. Correct? Copy this, and the same thing we are going to do for our false also. So I'm just going to do return payment required if user haven't paid. So I'll do user is not paid. So in that case you're going to pass false, and this is going to return payment required. So if you save this, and then let's run once again, and let's see what is happening. And you can see that 5 passed. Now here you can also do what you can also do. You can also run the coverage. We have a script in our package.js, and you can check it. So you can run the test coverage. So it's going to create a coverage. You can see that, and based on that it's going to create a coverage file here. Okay, so this is also where you'll be able to see the is the overall coverage: statements, branch, functions, and lines. Okay, branch is little tricky. Okay, so when you're going to have very complex application, functions, a lot of backend code, you'll see that covering branches or increasing the coverage for the branches is like too much. Okay, so it becomes little tricky sometimes, but overall you have to do what, right? You should keep more than 90 to 95% test coverage for all the files, right? So now, and again, this depends on your project requirement, like not project requirement, like team specific. Some teams, I think, I know, I'll be very honest, like I've worked in some teams, they haven't write test cases at all. I worked in some teams, they're very strict about test cases, like you have to cover a minimum 95% or 90% like that. Okay, so now this is done. So what will be the next thing? Next thing will be, say we have the we have something called matchers and edge cases. Now matchers we have already discussed. This expect is a matcher. Okay, so still what I'm going to do, right, I already created one more file here, because we need to understand some more other things. We need to cover some of the edge cases, that how you can cover the edge cases also. So let's say how you're going to do that in the next part. So till this part, the first one is completed, so we'll start with this one. So what I'm going to do, right, let's copy the file name, go to test folder, create one file, and here I'm just going to do .test.ts. okay, so this one we're going to start working in the next part. All right, so now let's understand what is actually matchers and how you can handle different kind of edge cases while writing test. So first let's see this particular function, right, and I think you can also go through the code, each and every file, right. So you can see that this is very simple again, that we have a function price, we are going to receive either number or null. Now this is important. If we are receiving null, return null. If less than 0, invalid price, means in negative, let's say if you are passing the input. If it is 0, it is free, or else the price we are returning. Okay, and then for the second one, right, see, this is very important. So here we have a function, okay, and we are receiving these two input, right, which either will be string or null, and this will be string of array, or this can be null, the lessons. And based on that, what we are simply doing, right, we are returning we are creating an error which is an empty array. So first we are actually taking this title that we are receiving. If this is empty or this is null, so we are just posting that to our error, okay, or else and then we are just taking a default value for the save title. Same for the lessons, and at the end we are returning all of this here. Okay, but this is all about the functionality that we have. Now we need to understand that in this particular function, how you are going to identify that what are the edge cases that we need to cover. Okay, before that we also need to understand some of the concepts. Okay, and this is very important. So here, as I already mentioned, we are going to understand something called matcher. Okay, now in the previous section I mentioned that we used already expect, and I think I just give this one or basically I told you that expect is actually matcher. That is wrong. So what actually matcher is, so when we are using expect and then we are giving the value, remember we are using the response or whatever we are passing here, then what we are writing after these. So let's see if we are doing 2b. Now this is actually called the matcher. Okay, so this response or result, whatever you are passing, this is the actual value. This is written by the code or by the function, and this 2b and then whatever value we are passing here, this is the matcher. So matchers are the language of comparison in our jest. So what will be matcher? So matcher will be the language of comparison in jest. Okay, in jest. So now why these matchers actually matter? Now remember we have different types of types, right? For example, whenever you are going to work with string or numbers, we usually use to be. Okay, then let's say we have something called objects or array, because we always don't have only strings or numbers, right? We are also going to have objects and array. So in that case, we also have something called to equal. Okay, now these all are matchers. Then let's say you can also make use of something called to content. This is also very important whenever you are going to work with objects, arrays and string. Okay, also let's say you have an array and you want to check the array size. So in that case, you have something called to have length. This is also another matcher, right? So there are so many. Now very important, let's say you want to understand or test null or undefined values. So in that case, you have something called to, I think, to be null, and you also have to be undefined. Now these each and everything is a matcher. Based on the circumstances that you have, you need to use all of these. Okay, now let's start with the first one. So first one, I think it's very simple. So in the first function, what we have, so we just have to give, first of all, I'm just going to check that when the price will be 0, I want to return free. This is what we have, right? Then let's say when the price is positive, right? Positive in the sense, let's say if it is 10 or 50 or 100. So in that case, what it's going to return? It's going to return that particular price here, right? So this is what it's going to return. And then also we also need to test the invalid price scenario. So in that case, what will happen when the price will be less than 0? So let's say price is minus 10. So all these things you can easily identify from this function, that these many things I need to check. And then at the end, we are also going to check if it is null. So let's see how we are going to do that. Okay, so first of all, let's do this one as describe, and here I'm just going to do get course price level. Okay, and here what we are going to do simply, so first what we need to do, I'm just going to take a test, and inside this I'm just going to do that returns free, right? It's going to return free when the price is 0. So I'll do when the price is 0. So now what we can do, simply I'm just going to do const result. So this will be get course price level, and what you have to pass, you have to pass here 0, and then you're simply going to do expect this result dot to be, and this will be equal to what? Free, because this is what we are returning here, right? This one, and this is done, right? So now let's run all of these side by side. So I'm just going to do npm run test, and let's see what is happening here. So you have 2 test suits, and then we have 6 all are pass. You can also do something like this, right? So let's say if I want to do copy relative path, clear this, and you can also run like this npm run test, and then you can paste this, right? So it's going to run that also. All right, so this also you can do. So now what you're going to do, right? So this is about the free scenario. Now you have also positive scenario. Now I'm not going to write each and every test case. Okay, I'm just going to give you some of the homework. So for example, the positive scenario, when the price will be greater than 0, what you're going to do here? So that will be first homework. So I'm just going to do write one test case when the price will be greater than 0. What will happen when the price will be greater than 0? So here you have to pass a value which will be greater than 0. Let's say 100. And if it is 100, so what this function is telling? So if it is 100, I'm going to return this, and then the value 100 rupees 100, right? So this is what you need to do. So this will be first homework. Now next we also have the invalid. Now invalid one, let's write it. So I'm just going to do returns invalid when the price is in negative. And here, so we are going to do const result. So this will be get course price level, and let's say I'm just going to pass minus 30. And in that case, what will be the result? So copy this, paste it here. So in that case, this will be invalid price. So if it is less than 0, we are going to return invalid price. So save this, and then if I just run it, and you can see that 2 are getting passed. All right, so this is done. And then we also need to do now null use case. So I'm just going to create one more test here. So I'm just going to do returns null if the price input is null. So here once again so we'll do const result. So this will be get course price level, and what you have to pass? You have to pass either number or null. So I'm just going to return null. Now how you can check null? As I already mentioned, we have to use a different matcher now. So in that case this will be result, and I'm going to do 2b null. So you're going to get 2b null. Okay, this one, and you don't have to pass anything, right? So it's always going to check that if something is null. And if I just save this, right, and let's run it again, all are getting passed. And you can also do npm run test, and you can see that all tests will be passed. All right, so this is about the matchers, right? So now remember all these matchers. Now you have to understand that in which scenario you are going to use all of this. When you are going to work with arrays, right, you are going to understand some of the things that how you're going to do now only. Okay, so this will be the first one. Now second one will be, we need to do quite a few things. So you need to understand that how you can work with all of this. First you have to see that what actually this particular function is taking as input and what actually this is returning here. Okay, this is very important. So you need to understand where this is returning a title, lessons, total lesson, first lesson, has lesson, and errors, something like that. So first, what will be the first scenario? First scenario you always call as valid scenario, right? So that will be your green pass. Green pass means whenever you're going to pass correct title and correct lessons, so in that case what this is going to return. So now consider I'm going to pass my title as Sangam and lesson I'm going to pass as array. Inside array I'm going to pass React.js and JavaScript. So that means what, I'm passing a valid scenario here. So in that case your title is Sangam, so it is not null, so it's going to return that particular title, correct? It's going to return that lesson, it's going to return the lesson's length, first lesson. If this is has lesson means if the lesson's length is greater than 0, so it will be true or it will be false. So let's how we're going to do that. So first what I'm going to do, right, close this and let's write one more, and I'm just going to give that function name here. So to build course meta. So let's start with first one, which will be the valid scenario. So I'm just going to do test, and I'll do returns the full object for valid inputs. So this would be my valid inputs, right? All right, now what are we going to do here? First of all, we are going to again take this const result. Now let's take this only, and I'm just going to call that build course meta. And here what are the things you have to pass? You have to pass a title, also you need to pass a lesson. Okay, so now in the title I'm just going to do node, listen, see carefully what are you doing. So I'm just going to do node testing, and here I'm just going to pass array, and inside array I'm just going to pass some lessons. So lessons, let's say I'm just going to give this one as intro. Also let's give this one as one more, which will be mocks. So this is what we are passing. Now remember this is a valid input. If this is a valid input, so in that case what will happen? Errors will be empty, right? Because your input is valid. So errors will be empty means title will be what? Title will be node testing. Why? Because node testing you are passing as input here. What will be lessons? Lessons will be this only. This is what you are passing, correct? Total lessons, what will be total lessons? 2, because you have 2 here. First lessons will be intro. Then you have the has lesson. Has lesson means if the lesson's length is greater than 0, yes, it is greater than 0, so this will be true, and errors will be empty. You're getting right what you're doing. We are simply just creating scenarios to pass all the conditions that this function is going to expect, right? So if you are passing correct input, it's always going to return these, and that time the errors will be empty. So now what are you going to do? So in that case, after this I'm just going to do expect. So I'm just going to do res, and now I'm just going to do 2 equal. Remember I mentioned, so we'll do 2 equal, and here you have to pass all the properties. So you have a title here, so title will be this node testing. All right, then what we have, let me just copy all of this, right? So I'm just going to copy all of this, paste it here. What will be lessons? Lessons will be intro and mocks. This is what it's going to return. This is will be what? This is will be 2, because you have 2 lessons. What will be the first lesson? First lesson is intro, so this will become intro. Has lessons will become true, and your errors will become empty because you don't have any errors, right? Because this is a valid one. So now what I'm going to do, right? So let's run this. That's it. So this is part. Now remember one thing, if you are passing a different input and you are expecting a different output, it's going to give you error. So let's say if I'm just going to save this and run it here, this will fail. Why? Because you are giving your Node.js testing, so this is actually invalid. Here if you see what you're doing, simply you're receiving the title and you're returning the same title at the end. So this is not manipulating this title here, okay, or changing the title here. So in that case you have to be very careful that you are passing the correct input and you're expecting the correct output always, and you can see that this will pass. All right, so this is the first valid scenario. Okay, now let's do one thing. What else we can, okay, let's say how you can use this to content. This is also very important, very useful. Okay, so what I'm going to do, right, I'm going to write one more test here. So I'm just going to do test, and what we can do, maybe let's do stores all lessons, and let us check array contents with to content. So this is another method we are going to understand, and we'll see what actually we are doing here. So now what I'm going to do, right, let's do one thing. Let's copy this and let's use the same one. And now what I'll do, right, I don't want to change I don't want to check everything. I only want to check that if this particular array, okay, this particular array, so this particular array means what? This particular array means this lesson. If this lesson contains this mock word or not, or maybe if this is getting tricky, right, let me just do, I'm just going to give my name. So Sangam knows React.js and Next.js, both, something like that. That I know both React and Next. I want to check that I don't want to check everything here. I only want to check that whether Sangam knows Next.js or not. Means I need to check this particular lesson contains Next.js or not. So this is where this to content is very helpful, right? So you only want to check a particular item. You don't want to check everything. So in that case, what you need to do is just have to do expect, and you have to do result dot, and you see that you're getting lesson, okay, here. And then you're going to do to content, that if this content next or not. If this is next means Sangam knows next. So now this is what you need to do. You don't have to check everything. This is the advantage, and this is very useful. Okay, I'm going to write it here, that very useful. Now what I'll do, right, simply I'm just going to clear this. First I'm going to run it, and we'll see that definitely it's going to pass. And I'm just going to change this one to Next.js, and now you'll see this is going to fail. So here it is expecting Next.js, but this is the receiving value. All right, I hope this is clear, right? The moment you are going to change this one to, let's say, Next.js, this is going to pass again. All right, so I'm moving to the next one. So let's see how you can check length. Okay, so I'm just going to do test, and let's do this one, check array size, something like this. You can always change the messages, right? I'm just explaining all of this. So for now I'm just going to copy this, paste it here, and now what I need to check, that whenever I'm going to pass this, I want to check if this res.lesson has a particular length or not. So in that case, what is the length? 2. So I want to check that. So how we are going to do that? So I'm just going to do expect, and I'll do res.lessons, and here you are going to do to have length. Okay, so you have a to have length, and you have to pass the length here, which will be 2, because we have a this property here. Now one thing I want to do mention, now consider this function that you have, you are passing lesson here. This function is doing something, and at the end the lesson, whatever you are passing as an input, at the end it is returning the double amount of lesson after doing certain functionality. I'm not sure if I'm able to explain it properly or not. So basically what I'm telling is, let's consider you are getting 2 lessons. Inside this function you're doing something, some API call or DB call, whatever you're doing. At the end your lesson length will become the 2 times based on the input you are receiving. So if you're receiving input lesson as 2, at the output you're receiving this one as 4. If this is what is happening here, so in that case you have to change this one to have length from 2 to 4. So what I mean by this, these all the test cases depends on your function behavior, right? What your function is doing, based on that you have to write the test cases, and based on that you have to cover the edge cases also. Okay, so now this is one thing I want to check. Now when I have a proper input, so in that case what will be my error? My error will be 0, right? It will be empty array, correct? Because this is what we have done here. If I have a proper input, my errors will be empty. So in that case I want to check my error also. So now here what I'll do, right, I'll do expect, and then let's do res.errors. So res.errors will be what? To have length, and this length will be what? 0, right? And if you save this, right, so let's run it again, and you can see that all are getting passed. Now you can't make this on 20 or even 3 also. This is going to fail. Alright, so now this is another important thing. This is the matcher of to have length. Alright, so now maybe what else we can do? I think alright, so let's say you can also use this to be matcher for your boolean values also. So for example, I'm just going to do test, and I'm just going to do return has lesson, right? This is what the property we have, has lessons. Return has lessons as true when lessons exist. This is what it's happening here, right? If you have a lesson and the length is greater than 0, so this will become true. So in that case what you can do, right, you can directly check this also. For example, let's say if I just copy the same one only, and then I'm just going to copy these. So here what I'm going to do, right, I'll do res dot has lesson, and here I'm just going to do this one as 2b, and this will be what? This will be true. Okay, why? Because now you're passing lesson which is 2. So if this is 2 means what? This if lessons dot length is greater than 0, so this will become true, and this is what we are checking here. Save this, and if you run it here, right, you will see that all will be passed. Oh, one is getting failed. Oh, I think I have to change this on to 2. Sorry, 1 minute. I'll just change this on to 2, and then I'm going to run once again. So all are getting passed. Now remember one thing, what will happen? See, I'm just going to remove this here. So if I remove this here, what will happen? This is now 0. So if this is 0 means what? Has lesson will become false, but you're checking this one as true, so this test case will fail. Okay, and you can see here, you see, so this is expected is true but received is false. So from your function you're receiving false, and that makes sense, right? Because you have given this, the length has to be greater than 0, so that means this will be either false or you have to give a value here. So if you give this on false, it's going to work again. See how I'm writing the test cases and how you have to decide. This is the trick, right? This video that I'm creating, right, this is not just about writing this function and writing the test cases. This video is about how you can write, right? How you have to think. I can't write 500 functions different and then write all the test cases and you'll see that I know everything. No, maybe you are creating one project where these 500 functions are not there. You're creating something else. So what I mean by this, you have to create the understanding by yourselves only, by practicing more and more. No teacher is going to teach you each and everything. Okay, this is the way that I'm going to teach. It's up to you how you're going to practice. Very simple. So this is what we have done. Now let's see how we are going to check undefined case also. Very important. So now what I'm going to do, right, simply, so see how I'm going to do that. Now how you are going to check the undefined. Now this is another very important query I can ask. You can pause the video and you can try to find how you can check an undefined condition here, or what is the possibility that undefined can occur here. Very possible. Can you guess? See, if I am passing this lesson as empty array, okay, so my lessons is empty. So now you see, notice what I am doing here. First lesson is safe lesson of 0. So what will happen? What will be the first lesson? Undefined, right? If you're not passing anything, it will become undefined. So this will be a valid undefined check. So simply what I can do, right, I'm just going to do a test, and here I'm just going to do sets first lesson as undefined, something like this, when the lessons array is empty. So now what I'll do, I'll copy this, paste it here, and now I'm simply going to do that expect response dot first lesson, right, and this will be to be undefined. And this makes sense because you don't have anything here, right? Save this, and if you run it here, you can see that this will pass for sure. But what I'll do, I'm just going to give a lesson here now. So I'm just going to do HTML, and you see this is going to fail. No, not this one, man, this one. So here I'm just going to pass here HTML. Okay, save this. The moment you will save this, will become failed. Why? Because now you have a first element here. So first element means what? This first lesson will become HTML. So that means this is false, right? So that means if I just do here 2b and then you pass here HTML, this is going to pass. So now if I just run it here, see, so you're getting right what I mean. So this will be undefined if this is empty. So then you can run it and you can see that this is getting passed. So this is how you can check undefined cases also. What else? Maybe I think we have covered almost everything. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's check one errors property also. What I'm going to do, right? So let's pass title as something and don't pass the lesson. So if you don't pass the lesson, so I'm just going to pass the lesson as null. Okay, so in that case what will happen if the lesson is null? See, you can, if the lesson is null, here it is going to push this to the errors, and then it's going to make the save lesson as empty, right? So this one I want to check. So I'm just going to do test, and I'm just going to do adds an error and empty lessons when empty lessons array when lessons are null. So now, so I'll do const result, and this will be build course meta, and here I'm just going to pass testing. And now see, for second one I'm going to pass this one as null. Okay, so I'm passing this one explicitly as null. So now what I'm going to do, simply I'm just going to do expect, and you're going to do result.lesson. So what will be result.lesson? Let's see if you're able to understand all this. Not, don't do all this blindly here, please. Don't write everything I'm doing, try to understand. So if we are passing null, what will happen? If you're passing null, so let's see, you're passing null, so this save lesson is equal to null. If this is null, so you're going to post this and you're making save lesson as empty. So that means your lesson will become empty, right? So here what will be? So this will become 2 equal and this will be as empty array, correct? Then what will be your total lessons? So I'm just going to do expect. I'll do lesson, result.total lessons. This will be what? 0, right? Because you don't have any lesson. And also what will be the first lesson? First lesson will become undefined, correct? So I'm just going to do expect, and here I'll do result dot first lesson, and first lesson will be to be undefined. I hope this is clear. Now how you are going to check the errors? So what will be your errors? See, if this is null, you are posting this to your errors array, right? So that lessons are required, this is present in your lesson errors array. So now what you can do, right, simply I'm also going to check that expect result.errors, and now you have to make use of 2 content. This one we have discussed, right? So in these 2 content, this message will be present, lessons are required. That's it. So this is what it will happen when you're passing the lessons as empty or null. If you're passing null, your lessons will become empty. If this is empty, means your total lessons will be 0. First lesson will be undefined, and there will be lessons are required in your errors array. And if you run this now, this is going to pass. Alright, so I hope this is clear. So this is what you need to do, or this is how you are going to handle different kind of edge cases, how you can make use of different type of matches. Now, okay, I'm just going to give you one more last one, okay, for this one. So let's write one more, and I'm just going to do does not include something like this, a lesson that was never provided. So what I mean by this, so in my input, whatever lessons I'm providing, let's say React.js, Next.js, HTML, consider another lesson, for example, let's say database. If this is not present, so you're not going to include that because that is not present in the input only. So what I mean by this, so here I'm simply going to do const result, and then I'm just going to do build course meta, and I'm just going to do unit testing. and see what I'm doing here. I'm just passing here maybe unit testing, and I'll do jest, and I'm also going to do RTL. RTL means React Testing Library. Okay, now here I'm simply going to do that. Okay, expect result dot lessons. Now I want to check which is not present. If you want to check which is present, you are going to use to content. This you know, right? So to content means you are going to check if jest is present, RTL present, but I'm going to check the opposite. So how you're going to check opposite? So to check opposite, you have to do not. Okay, so that means this is not present, not, and then you're going to use to content. Okay, and here what is not present? Jest is present, RTL is present. Let's say super jest is not present, or maybe ABC is not present, or something else, maybe vtest is not present, right? So now if you save this, this is going to pass. So run it here, see that this is passing. But if you just do here jest is actually present, but you're simply telling that this should not content here, this is wrong, so this is going to fail. Alright, so you can see that expected value not jest, but received value is jest. I'm talking in Hindi, man. Okay, so expected value is not jest, received array we are getting jest, so which is wrong. So that means if you give this and remove this not, then it's going to pass because it's already present. But if you're using not, so in that case you have to be careful that okay, which value is not present. So vtest is not present here, so in that case this will pass. So my point is you have to understand that how you can check the values which is not present using these methods. You have to use dot not dot to content. Okay, so with this particular part is also done. I think this is very important. You have done a lot of things. See, if I can guarantee, if you can learn all of this properly, right, and you know which matches to apply in which scenario, what are the cases you need to cover, most of the times you'll be able to write test by yourselves also. Believe me, you don't have to make use of any AI tools also. You don't have to be dependent. So that is the reason directly jumping and writing routes, test cases, writing controllers, services, you need to know the basics very well, right? So then only you'll be able to do all of this. So with this, now let's move on to the next one. All right, everyone, so moving to the next one. So in this one we are going to understand now jest function. Now here actually I've taken intentionally little complex example so that you can understand all the things better. So you can see that we have one function, and one thing you need to understand that here we have one clear dependency, that is this create gateway refund. Okay, now what will happen, right, in real backend application, whenever you're going to create that, this particular dependency might be, let's say you have some payment integration like Stripe or Razorpay or some other payment gateway, right? What will happen whenever we are going to write test, we do not want to hit a real payment service, right? So what we need to do, we are going to replace that dependency with our jest function. I hope this is clear, and this is the main idea. Okay, so here what simply we are doing that, so we have some condition that if the days since purchase is greater than 7, we are going to return some information. You can check it. If the amount is less than 0, we are going to return something, and then we are creating a reason and gateway. If this is false, so in that case we are simply returning that gateway refund failed, or else this is approved. Okay, so this is what actually we have done here. But this is all about the function, but let's understand what actually jest function does in very detailed way. Okay, because what will happen, right, in most of the time you'll see that whenever you're going to write actual test cases for your application, right, you are going to use this particular concept quite a few times. Okay, so first let's go here, or maybe let's rename this, and I'm going to just copy this and I'll just create it here, and I'll do .test.ts. Okay, so first of all, as I already mentioned, that in real application there can be a lot of scenarios that can happen, right? Let's say you are calling a payment gateway, or you are sending an email, once the payment is successful, you're writing to a database, right? Or you're publishing a message to a queue. So there are a lot of things, right? I can't name each and every scenario because I think you understand so what I mean, right? So in real test case, based on the type of application that you are creating, the requirement can be different, right? Now why you might be thinking that, okay, why we do not want to call this real dependency to run, right? The reason is because whenever you are going to try to call or call that particular dependency, there can be a lot of issues can occur. For example, let's say it can be slow, it is first of all external, expensive, and a lot of other issues, right? So here we have something called jest.function. So what actually this is going to do, this is actually going to create a mock function, as simple as that. So this jest dot function is going to create a mock function. Okay, now what actually this function is going to do? Mainly two jobs. First, it is going to stand in place of that real dependency. For example, let's say you are using stripe, so this is going to replace this particular stripe. Okay, and second, it also going to record how our code actually using that particular dependency. I hope this is clear, right? So simply we want to see that whether it is called, how many times we want to call that particular dependency, what are the arguments we want to pass, and at the end what actually that is returning as a result. I hope this is clear. All right, now if you go to our function, right, we have this process refund request. Here we have a dependency, right, that create gateway refund. Now these can be real payment provider in our production application, right? So here what we need to do, so first of all we need to replace these with a jest dot function, right? And this is going to help us verify two kind of things, very important. First one will be interaction testing. So what I mean by this, so simply you just think that we are calling a stripe method here. So we simply want to see that whether our code actually calling this dependency correctly or not. So this is what your jest dot function is going to do. Okay, and at the end what will be the outcome? Outcome is nothing but did our main function return the correct final result or not. Okay, so this is what we are going to check. So let's how we are going to do that. Okay, so first of all I'm just going to take a describe and let's give this one as let's copy this only, and here I'm simply going to take a test and let's see what actually you're doing here. I'm simply just going to give that call payment, consider that as payment gateway only, right? So payment gateway dependency with the, so what are the things we are receiving? We have a payment ID, we have a amount, and also we have also a reason, right? See what we are we also have a reason here. Okay, so we want to see that whether we want to call this payment gateway dependency with the correct payment ID, amount, and reason, right? So I'll do current payment ID, amount, and reason. Okay, and now let's see how we are going to do this. So first of all, what we need to do, as I already mentioned, that jest dot function is going to create a mock function. Okay, and we have something called mock return value, very important, and you are going to use n number of times in a real application whenever you're going to write test cases. Okay, so what this mock return value is going to do, this mock return value function that we are going to use, that is going to tells that particular mock that what it should return. I hope this is clear. So now I'm just going to do, see, this is very important. Okay, so here I'm just going to do create gateway refund, but this will be mock. Okay, so we are creating a mock because, as I already mentioned, please listen, this one very important, consider this is a stripe gateway, right, or some real payment provider you are using. So we need to mock it, so that is the reason we're creating a gateway refund mock. So how we are going to do that? So we have jest, and this jest is going to give you a function. Okay, and here I'm simply going to do, okay, this will be my mock return value, so I'll do mock return value, and here I'm simply going to tell that this will be, so if you go here, right, it is returning okay, and it is also returning refunded ID, which will be either string or it can be null. So here I'm simply telling that, okay, you create one function, mock function, that function is going to return a value, and that value is our okay, which will be true, and refund ID, right? So let's go here, refund ID. Refund ID will be a ID. Refund ID, maybe let's give this one as refund RFB insert underscore 001 or whatever you want to write. So simply, whenever we are simply telling that once our payment is successful and refund is successful, if it is successful, so in that case what it is going to do, it is going to return okay will be true, and refunded ID will be a proper refunded ID that we are going to get from that particular payment provider, let's say Stripe or Reserve, whatever we are using. Okay, so now what we will do, now we are going to call our actual function. Okay, so actual function is what? This function, this is the actual function, and this function is going to receive order ID, payment ID, amount, days since purchase, whatever, blah blah. You can have a number of inputs, and then you are going to pass what? The mock, actual mock. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, simply I'm just going to do const result, and this will be process refund request. And this is important. Now you are going to pass an order, so I'll do order ID, so order 001. Also what we need to pass, payment ID, I'll do payment 001. We need to pass the amount is numbered, so I'll do 14, let's do 999. And also I'm just going to do 3, which is this days since purchase. And now I need to pass what, the create refund get refund mock. Okay, so this is what we are going to call. So now you understand that why this is helpful, because if you want to call this particular function, you need to return this gateway, this particular method, right, or this helper, whatever you're using. If you need to imitate the real Stripe or Razorpay provider, it will be much more difficult, and also you don't want to do that. And that is the reason we have this particular function which actually creating that mock, and at the end it's simply telling that okay, this is a function and it is going to return me this particular value, either okay, which is true, and refund ID is a proper refund ID. So now what we are going to do right here, it is very important. Now we have a something method called what is that, matcher. So matcher is to have been called times. Okay, so what actually this is going to do, so it's simply going to check that whether the dependency that we are using that is actually called or not. Okay, so how we are going to do that, so I'm simply going to do expect. So we have our dependency, what, this is our dependency. So we want to check that whether in our real application, see what will happen in your real application, you have a button, you're clicking there and it's calling our Stripe method or whatever, right? Then only it will go to the Stripe payment page. I'm just giving some hypothetical situation, not hypothetical, but actually in real application also something like that will happen. So now you're going to go to that Stripe payment page. So same thing we're imitating here, that okay, I have this mock, so I need to call this mock only once. So I'm simply telling this test function that whenever you want to run this test file, you need to see that whether this particular gateway refund mock is calling one time or not. Okay, so I'm simply going to do expect, and then you're going to do create gateway refund mock, and you're going to do to have been called times. See, and here you have to give how many times you want to call. So I want to call only once. Okay, now remember, this is actually very helpful. Why? Because many bugs are not about the wrong value. Okay, it is about calling something too many times, or you are not calling at all. This is where it is very helpful. Now I can't give you that okay, you want to use one all the time. It's not like that. This is only about the function that we have written here. Maybe in your application you're calling something else 2 times, 3 times. Based on that you have to change. So you can't like decide based on what you're learning from this particular video that okay, this will be called only once all the time. I hope you're getting it. You have to understand this particular concept. So now this is done, and then what you're going to do, right, we have one more method or one more matcher, which is to have been called with. So now these to have been called with is going to do what? It's going to check the exact argument that we are going to use in that call. Okay, so see how we are going to do that. Now here if you go to this create gateway, right, you see what we are passing here. We are passing a payment ID, amount, and the reason. So these we need to pass, right? And now this is one of the most important mock assertion, you can say. So this is called mock assertion. So I'm just going to do mock assertion. So whenever I'm going to call this, I need to pass those arguments, right? So how we are going to do that? So here you are going to do expect. Again you are going to call this create refund mock, and then you are going to do dot to have been called with, and here you have to pass that what are the things it's going to receive. So this is receiving a payment ID, which is this payment 001. All right, also it's receiving the amount, so amount is 999, and what else it has? It also has the reason. Now this reason will be, I'm just going to give one reason, that customer refund. And then I'm just going to pass the order number, customer refund, order 001. See, you are getting right what we are doing. So simply calling this particular method here with the arguments that we are actually using in the code. So then once we'll do all of this, now we will be able to do what? We are going to verify. After doing all this interaction, we'll be able to see that whether it is returning the final result or not. Now if you notice one thing, this is a valid scenario, right, where everything will be successful. So if everything is successful, what we are doing, so we need to return the status will be approved, right, message will be refund processed successfully, refund ID will be the refund ID that we are passing, and refunded amount will be that particular amount. Makes sense, right? So now what you're going to do, I'm simply going to do expect. Now I have this result, and these will be true equal, and here you're going to pass status. So let me just copy from here. Status will be approved. Refund ID will be the refund ID that we are using. So let's see this refund ID, and amount will be 999. Okay, so now let's save this, and now let's see first if it is working or not. Okay, so I'm just going to clear. Let's copy this relative path, and I'm going to do npm run test. I'll paste it, and let's see what is happening here. Okay, so one is failed, so we are getting customer refund for order. Okay, let's see what you're returning in the order. Customer refund for order. Expected is this, received is this. Okay, let's see what you're doing here. Oh, okay, sorry. So this will be customer refund for order, that's correct. So we'll do customer refund for order. So now let's see here. All right, so this is getting passed, okay, because we are returning this, right? Okay, if you see, right, we have the reason of this. So this is how you are going to do it. So now this will be one valid scenario. Now what you're going to do, right? So let's say one more scenario where we are going to do what you're going to do, that it doesn't call the payment gateway when the refund window is already closed. So what is the scenario? I can see that we have this particular scenario. The refund window will be closed when the days of purchase is greater than 7. Okay, so let's see how we're going to do that. So I'm just going to close this, and I'll do test, and I'm just going to do doesn't call the payment when the refund window is already closed. Okay, so first again what we need to do, we need to create the mock. Okay, so I'll copy this and then paste it here. So let's do this one as 2, and then what I'm going to do simply, so I'm going to call this, so copy the result, paste it. So I'll do 2, let's do this one 2, increase this, and here what you have to pass. So see, when the days will be greater than 7, then only this this condition will satisfy, right? So what you'll do, we'll give 1. Okay, and then we are going to pass the mock here. So what will happen now, you have to understand all these things, right? I can't explain enough that how much important this is. Here you have to have that ability to understand that, okay, once these will satisfy, so immediately returning. So immediately returning means what? Means this method we are not going to call again. So here, if this is the case, so this will be what? So I'm just going to do expect, and I'll do create refund mock dot not. Why? Because we are not going to call. Okay, dot to have been called. This is clear, right? Means simply I'm telling that if the days is 11, which is greater than 7, so this is going to immediately return here. It will never go to this particular line. So that means we are not going to call this, right? And if this is the case, so what will happen? So the result will be, because this is getting returned, so you're going to return status will be rejected, message will be refund window closed, refund ID will be null, and refunded amount will be 0. So that means after this, we are simply going to tell that expect result will be what? So I'll do 2 equal, and result will be, so let's copy this right from here. So this will be the result, and save this, and this is done. Okay, so now let's run this and let's see if this is working. That's it. So this is going to, see, this is not that much difficult to understand. You have to understand these conditions, how you're doing that. See, it's like everything is in your hand. So you are manipulating everything. So you know that, okay, if I pass here 12, so it will pass this condition, it will return from here, it will never go to this line only. So it will never go to this line means what? It will never call this method. So that is the reason we are doing that not have been called. Okay, so now what else? Now I'll give you one homework. Okay, I'm not going to write similar way, exact similar way how we have done this. You have to write one more test case for these, that when the amount will be less than 0, then also it's going to return from here. It is not going to call this. I hope this is clear, right? So that means what I simply meaning here, so let's go here. I'm just going to give you the homework. So this will be the homework that so doesn't call payment gateway when the refund amount is invalid. Okay, try to do by yourself. So what will happen, refund amount is invalid means amount is less than 0. So that means what you need to do, whenever you're going to call this, right, you're going to call this, you're going to pass a negative value here. So then this will be the condition will satisfy, and based on that you have to return this particular thing here, because it is going to return here. It is also not going to call this. I'm not going to write this is similar whatever you have done here. So save this. So this is done. What else we have? Now one thing I also wanted to write here. Now consider that there can be one more test case, that this is going to return failure. So let's go here, this one, this condition. So it's going to return failure where? When the gateway dependency report that refund creation failed. So what I mean by this gateway, consider, go here, and let's say this is returning false and refunded ID is null. So it means what? This is a fail case scenario. So if this is a fail case scenario, what will happen? So in this case, this gateway result, if this is false, so it's going to return status will be failed, gateway refund failed, refund ID will be null, refunded amount will be 0. This is clear, right? So what I mean that if the this create gateway refund is returning false, or let's say in some reason if this is failed, so this is also a failed case scenario. So this also we need to handle. So how we are going to do that? So let me just write it. So I'm just going to do a test, and I'll do returns failure, maybe returns failure when the gateway dependency reports that it failed. No, refund creation failed. So now you'll do one time, do two times, do three times, and see from the fourth time you will be able to do it by yourself. Now see how much easier it is. So I'm going to copy this, okay, and then you're going to paste it here. So when this will fail, what will happen? This is going to return what? False, and refund ID will be what? Null, right? Simple. So if this is the first thing, and then what you need to do, again you're going to call this method. So I'm just going to call this, and let's give this an order 004, maybe payment. I'll do payment fail 004 amount, and then this give this one as 1. Remember, if you give more than 7, what will happen? It will never come here. It will fail. It will succeed in this step only. So you have to be careful on this small thing. So this will be 1, and you're going to pass this. So first of all, what will happen? So if this is 1 and everything passes, so this condition will not satisfy. This will also not satisfy because amount is greater than 0. So that means this is going to call this method we are going to call. So what will happen? Again, we need to do what? We are going to check this, that this is going to call at least one time. So copy this, paste it here, all right, and then what will happen? That if the OK false and refund ID null, what this mean? That this is actually returning OK as false, means this is failed. Means maybe let's say there can be multiple reason. In Razorpay something error is there, so it's going to sometimes your payment will fail, right? So this is actually that scenario. So if this is the case, so in that case I'm just going to do expect, and I'll do result dot to equal. So what it's going to return? It's going to return this scenario here. So this will be status failed, gateway refund failed, refund ID null, and refunded amount will be 0. So copy this, paste it here, save this, and then you're going to run once again, and you'll see that everything will be passed. All right, that's it. So I think this is all about how you're going to handle your jest function, or let's say how you're going to create function which is going to mock something that you're using in actually in your production application. Okay, now what I'm thinking, right, I think these will be more than enough. Now remember one thing, these needs a lot of practice. Okay, so what you need to do, right, you need to create quite a few more function and try to practice by your own. Also, if possible, go to the official documentation, or maybe read some blogs, and then only go to GPT or whatever I think some of you guys will do, and then you try to understand some of the that give me some very small function, right, and then try to implement by your own. So with this, now let's move on to the next one. So in the next one, what we're going to do, right, maybe let's understand function is done. So we'll do jest.mock, which is also very, very important. So let's see how you're going to do that in the next. So now let's understand jest.mock. Okay, so before that we need two files, okay, for this. So first you can see that we have one helper function which simply just returning some if else condition is there, that if it is greater than 0, return advanced or intermediate or beginner. And the important part is that we are importing this particular function in this function. Okay, so this is the important part. So you can see that we are importing, and based on that we are checking the level, and then at the end we are returning the student name, score, and the message. Okay, where this student is at that particular level. Now, so first of all, why actually we need something called jest.mock, right? So first let's do one thing. Let's copy the name, and I'll go here and I'll do .test.ts. okay, so why we need something called jest.mock? So what this is going to do, very, very simple. See what will happen, right? And this is very common. I don't have to also explain in very details, because whenever you're going to create any kind of code or anything, there is a high possibility that you are going to import some function or some other things from different file, right? It's very, very common. Now here what we are doing, so we have this build student summary which is importing this particular function, right? Now here what we need to do, we are directly importing that inside this particular file. What we need to do, right, we want to replace that imported dependency in test, this particular dependency, and that is the reason we use something called jest.mock. okay, now there is a very important difference when you're going to use jest.function, when you're going to use jest.mock. Very, very important. Here please note it down. So jest.function will be, you pass a function directly as an argument. See, you have already seen this one here, right? We are passing that create refund function. So here you pass a function directly as an argument, so this will be jest.function. What jest.mock is, so jest.mock will be, if I want to explain in a very simpler way, so this will be your file. So what file? This file imported dependency from another file, right? So this is what you are doing. So that means your file imports dependency from another file, and I think this is very, very clear, right? Now you understand. Okay, when I need to use jest.function, when I'm passing the function as argument directly. Jest.mock will be when your file imports dependency from another file. Okay, now here also simply what is happening, we are importing dependency from another file, right? So how we are going to now mock it? Now this is actually very important, and you have to do this one, right? See, whenever you are going to write any test case, right, you'll see that if let's say you're creating a Node.js backend application or whatever it is, and you're using any multiple functions from different file, and you are not mocking in your test file is not able to understand what actually that file is doing. I hope this is clear, right? So now you may ask me one query, that why actually need this, or what, in which way this is going to help me. So see, I'm going to give you three reasons. First of all, it's going to control what it returns. Okay, second will be going to check whether it is actually getting called or not, and third will be to check that what argument it is receiving. So let's see how you're going to do that. So first what you're going to do, right, I'm just going to do jest, and this is going to give me this mock. Okay, and here what you need to do, right, you need to give the module name. Okay, this module name will be our mocked version. So in this case I need to mock which one? This level, right, level, I don't know what name I've given, but level, this one. So this is what I need to mock. So I'll go to where, so I need to go to source, and then I'm going to go to this function, because this is what we're importing in this function here. Okay, so this is now what we are doing. So after this jest.mock, this imported function will be what? This will become a jest.mock at runtime. This is very important. Okay, so what actually doing here, so after this line, this function, so we are importing a function, right? So this imported function, I'll do this imported function becomes a jest.mock at runtime, right? So now what you can do, right, we also let's do a TypeScript cast. So what we are going to do, I'm simply going to do const, and I'll do mock get, what is the name, level. Okay, and this will be equal to, so you have get level, so you need to import this one. So you're going to import from that particular path only. This is the path, and I'm just simply going to tell that, okay, this will be my jest dot mocked function. So there will be a mocked function, this one, mocked function, and here this will be type of get level. Okay, so simply what you're doing, right, we are casting it so that your TypeScript, because you're using TypeScript, right, so your TypeScript understand that we want to use these mock helpers, because whenever we are going to write the actual test, we need to do what, right, we need to use this mock returned value, or let's say you want to use mock reset, and that time we actually need this one. So we are going to write a simple test, we actually cast this particular, so to cast it. Okay, so your TypeScript will understand that we want to use the mock helpers. So this is done. Now what we are going to do, we are going to start writing the test cases. So here I'm simply going to do describe, and here I'm just going to take the build student summary. Okay, now here what we need to do, right, we need to take something called beforeEach. Now please, this one we are going to discuss in the next part only in details, right, what is beforeEach, and then we have something else, right, also we have the, you can see here, right, we have afterEach, this one, beforeEach and afterEach. So we are going to understand in the next part, but for now let's take a beforeEach, and here what I will do, simply I'm just going to do a mock reset. So I'll do mock get level dot mock reset. Okay, so simply what we are doing, we are simply resetting it before every test, so that whenever you're going to start or run a test, it will stay clean. Okay, so I'm just going to write it here that you are going to do what, we are resetting it. So reset it before every test, so each test starts clean. Okay, so this is the first thing we need to do. All right, so now let's start writing the test cases. So first I'm just going to create a valid test scenario. So let's something like uses the mocked imported function and returns the mocked value. Okay, so here what I'll do, right, now one thing is very interesting, that here you are going to decide that what your mock function is going to return or should return, although the actual function is not returning that value. All right, now this might be a little tricky to understand. So what I mean by this, now see that we have this mocked get level, this is our function, right, that we have mocked. What I'll do, right, is do mock get level dot mock return value. Okay, and here I'm just going to return that, okay, I want to return expert. Now the interesting thing is we are actually not returning expert from here. So simply what I mean by this, I'm simply telling that here we can decide that what your mocked function should return, and it's going to behave in that way. Okay, so let's write it here, even if your actual function is not returning that value. Okay, so what will happen, right, this test that we are now writing is going to receive what, it's going to receive expert. Okay, so I'm just going to write here that this test is now receiving expert as value from this mock function. So from this mock function. Okay, remember here we are actually controlling this mock, this is important. Okay, so this function is going to return this expert. Now what I'm going to do, right, I'm going to call out actual function. So actual function is what, our build student summary, because if you notice that this is actually calling that helper function here, but at the end we need to call this, right, and then we need to pass the student name and the score. Now I'm just going to do build student summary, I'm going to pass my name here, and let's give a value something like maybe 65. Okay, so this is what you're doing. First of all, what we need to check, so what will happen if you go here, what is happening? See, you need to understand or pause the video and try to guess. First, you see at the beginning line you are calling this particular function. So in the test case, you need to see that whether this function is getting called or not. So the exact thing we have understood here, that this is getting called or not one time, right? How many times you are calling here? One time, right? So that means what this is clear, that now I need to check that expect this mock get level, this particular function should call at least once. So I'm just going to do mock get level, and I'll do two have been called times, and then this will be 1. Okay, remember the main function is actually calling that imported helper, right? So you need to see that actually this is getting called or not. So this is the first thing we need to do. And now what you're going to do, right, we can also verify the exact score that was passed to that helper. How we are going to do that? So to do this one, so I'm just going to do expect, and I need to get this mock only, and here what method you need to use, right? You have to do to have been called with. Okay, and then what you have to pass? You have to pass the value. So what value we are passing here? 65. Okay, now what we can do, we can simply check the actual result. So actual result, it should return me the student name, score, level, and the message. So student name will be what? Sangam. What will be the score? 65, because we are returning this. Now can you guess what will be the level? Now logically here the level should be what? If it is greater than 50, it should be intermediate. The reason I already mentioned that we are actually handling or managing the return value, because we are receiving expert here, so this is going to return expert. Okay, so this is the important part. So now I'm just going to do expect, and this will be result, and this will be 2 equal, and now I'm simply going to copy these 4 lines. So student name will be Sangam, score will be 65. What will be the level? Level will be what actually this function is returning, expert, and this student name will now become Sangam, is currently at expert level, so this will be expert level. Okay, save this, and this is done. So now if I run this, right, so let's copy this, run test, and see what is happening here. That's it. So this is going to pass. The point is, let's say if you just do here intermediate, because you might be thinking, oh, my actual code is returning intermediate if the score is greater than 50, which is 65, and less than 80, but this is going to fail. Okay, so if you go here, right, so let's say if I just return intermediate here, it's going to give you error. Okay, why? Because you are actually doing what? You are returning expert here. This is a mock return, so this should return you the expert only. Okay, so this is how you need to mock a function, and then based on that you can write your test cases. Alright everyone, so now let's understand another very important concept, and that is jest.spyOn. Okay, so as you can see that again I already created one helper function here, not helper function, like I already have one simple example. Now the point that you need to understand here, it is that this function that we have built price summary, this actually uses the helper object here. Okay, this helper object that we have. So what actually this is doing, right? So if you notice that we are getting this discount amount as input. If this is less than 0, so we are throwing one error. Then based on that we are calculating the final price. If it is less than 0, so we are simply throwing another error that final price cannot be negative. And here this is the important, that what we are doing that we are using this method from this particular object. Okay, so at the end we are returning this result. Now this is fine, but what we need to understand, right, that why actually we need this jest.spyOn, and what is the use case, why actually we need it, and in which scenarios that you will be able to apply. Okay, so first let's do one thing. Let's rename, copy this, and then I'll create one more file here, and let's give this one as jest.spyOn.test. Alright, so let's understand the concept first, that what actually this jest.spyOn actually resolve, right? So see, we usually have a lot of functions in our code, right? And sometimes let's say we don't want to fully replace a particular function or a module. Instead, what we want to do, right, maybe let's say we want to watch a particular real method. We want to check whether that method is being called or not, how many times it is being called, and also what are the arguments that particular function or the module is receiving, right? Now this is where this jest.spyOn is actually helpful. Now if you're a complete beginner, you need to understand this thing is that this is actually different from jest.mock that we have learned before. Okay, so what actually we have done using jest.mock, so jest.mock, what we have done that we usually replace the dependency entirely. Okay, so I'm just going to give that jest.mock, so we replace the dependency entirely. But here what this jest.spyOn is going to do, right? Now this, what we are going to do, right, we usually start by observing a real method. We are not replacing immediately. Okay, so we'll start by observing a real method. Okay, this is actually different, you need to understand this. Okay, so what actually this means is that the real implementation can still run, and also we can still inspect that, okay, what is the uses, what are the arguments that particular method is using. So this is where, so we are actually acting like a spy. Okay, now later if we want, what we can do, right, we can also override the method. So we have different spied method like mock return value, mock implementation, or all those things. Okay, so in a very simple way, so whenever we are doing that, okay, if we are starting a spy, so what we are simply telling, right, so if you're starting a spy, this simply means that you have to watch this method. That's it. That is spy on this particular method. Alright. Later, if we want, we can also tell that, okay, you watch this method, and then we want to control this method also. I hope this is clear, right? Now let's understand a very simple use case that we already have that object, right? You can see that this object that we have, and this object has a method. Okay. Now your main function, this function is, let's say you have, whatever function you have doesn't matter, your main function is calling that particular method and you want to verify that call. Okay, so how we are going to implement a spy here? So what we want to do, right, we want to spy on this particular method here that is being used in the main function. Okay, so let's say how we are going to do that, right? Because I think we have already discussed the basic concepts. So what I'll do, right, I'm just going to take a describe and let's give this one this function name. Okay, so first of all, what we are going to do, so first I'm just going to take a test and I'll just going to do that calls the real helper. Okay, see, this is actually important. This is going to call the real helper and we're going to spy on that real helper function only. Okay, and I'm just going to do still let's us inspect the calls. Okay, so let's see how we are going to do that. So first of all, what I'm going to do, right, I'm just going to create, so let's see what function we have. We have a format currency, right? So I'm just going to copy this. This is the method that we want to spy, right? So this is the method we are using here. So we want to check whether this method is being called or not, what arguments that we are passing, whether the argument is being passed or not, all those things. So I'm just going to do format currency and then I'm just going to give this one as a spy. Very simple. So we'll do jest.spyOn, and here what you have to pass, right? You can see that this jest.spyOn is going to take an object, okay, and the method name. So what it's going to do, it's going to create a spy on that particular method. I'm just going to repeat once again. So we have an object and the method name. Okay, whenever you're going to use this, so it's going to create a spy on that particular method. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm just going to simply do price utils. Okay, and then I'm just going to give format currency. So you can see that already coming that, okay, this is my object and this is the function that I have and this is the function that I wanted to use the spy on. That's it. So now what you can do, so I'm simply going to do result. See these things, right? If see, I know how I'm explaining, and I think most of you agree that not many courses or videos that you will find that they are going to explain in that way. I'm just not showing off. See, the reason why I'm able to explain all of this in a very simple way, because remember I actually use this in my professional experience multiple times. Okay, now what I mean by this is that when you have when you learn something, right, and let's say you are a student or you are in college, you practice multiple times until unless you apply all these things in a real project, right, you'll see that the real experience will come from there. That doesn't mean that you have to work in a company only. Even if you're working or let's say you're working on a freelancing project, right, you will understand that what I mean, those who have already worked in freelancing and everything. So experience actually matters, and practice will also matter. So that is the reason why I'm repeating all these things multiple times, is whenever you're learning something, right, don't limit yourself learning from that particular video or from that course only. This is not what I used to do. When I used to learn, let's say I bought some Udemy courses also when I was in my college, okay, that time also. So I used to practice a lot, I used to read a lot of blogs. So you'll see that now for me it will be easier to explain, but you also have to see the struggle that I've done in last 9-10 years. Okay, so this is what you have to do. If you're only relying on these AI tools and everything, AI is going to take your job, right? So because you yourself make like it'll be, so how to explain, like you will be more weaker day by day, the more dependent you will be on the AI tools. Okay, I know this is little off track, but I wanted to explain all of this multiple times. So if I want to do sum up everything, right, you have to practice, you have to keep the dependence on yourself also, right? See, AI will be there and everything will be there. That doesn't mean that AI is going to do the 100% of your job. AI is going to do 90%. The rest 10% you have to do it. Okay, this is how it will work. So this is what I wanted to mention, that please do lot of practice, see less news. Okay, go to LinkedIn and watch multiple posts on AI is going to take this over. See, this is going to make you more frustrated. Instead, you should focus on your own learning, and you'll see that you're going to get a job and you also will be able to survive. So now I don't know what from where I came all of this, but this is actually important. Okay, whatever I have explained. All right, so now you can see that. So what we have done, right, so we created this particular function. So now jest.spyOn is going to spy on this particular function, which is what, based on the object that I passed, and this object has a function. So this spy on method will be able to understand, okay, this is the method that I need to spy on. So now let's see what this is receiving. So this is receiving a course title, original price, and the discount. So I'm just going to give this one as Node.js and give this one as original price 2000, or let's do 999, and discount is 50, something like that. Okay, so now here you can see that what this main function format is: original price, final price, and the saved amount. If you go here, right, original price, final price, and the saved amount. So what this basically means, just pause the video and try to understand what I'm actually explaining here. So this simply telling that, okay, if we have original price level, final price, saved amount level, that means this method should be called how many times? 3 times. Okay, so we are calling 3 times, right? So that means what we need to do, so first we need to tell this particular spy that, okay, now you have to check that whether this function is being called 3 times or not. So this will be expect, and then you're going to do format currency spy, and you'll do to have been called times, and you will give 3. Okay, now see also what you can do, right, you can also verify the argument are being passed. Now see what are the things is happening here. Now if you notice that here what we are doing, we are passing original price, final price, and the discounted price, right? Now what you can do, right, you can also verify the exact arguments across those calls. So these 3 calls. Okay, so what I mean by this, so I'm just going to do here expect, and I'll do format currency spy, and here I'm just going to do to have been there will be nth called with. Nth call means this will be the your nth call, so first call. So in the first call, whenever I'm doing the first call, so this call, okay, so here I wanted to pass the what I'll do, right, so let's do this one as, this will be the original price, right, original price. So this will be 999, this will be my original price. Okay, then the what is the next call? Next call is the final price. Final price will be original price minus discounted price. So now I'm just going to do expect, and I'll do format currency spy dot to have been nth call with. So this will be my second call. So what will be your final price? Final price will be original price. Original price is 999, and then you have the discounted, which is 50. So this will become what? Can you guess? So it will become 949, correct? And then what we have, we also have the saved amount. Saved amount is your discounted amount. So these will be expect format currency spy dot to have been nth call with. So this will be my third call, and here what I'm passing the discount of 50. That's it. All right, so now I think you're getting right. Okay, when I'll do the first call, this will be my first call, this is the input I want to pass, This is my second call, this is the input I wanted to pass, and this will be my third call. And then at the end you can check the result. So I'm just going to do expect result, and then what you'll do, 2 equal, right? And then you're going to just use whatever we are returning. So copy this, paste it here. So this will be your course title. So course title will be Node.js original price level. So these will be let me just do one thing. I'm just going to remove this, or else let's copy this from here. And then this will be rupees. So what is my original price? Original price I'm passing 999, so this will become 999. Final price, this will become 949, and saved amount will be how much? 50. And this will be your course title, right? So we'll do by Node.js for final price, which will be 999, and saved rupees 50. Okay, so this is what we need to do, right? So now let's run this, and let's copy this relative path, and I'll do npm run test. Okay, so I think I have done, oh, this will be this, you have to pass this rupee. Alright, so now let's run this, and you can see that this is getting passed, right? See, if you understand till this part, right, I hope that you should be able to learn a lot of concept in testing. Why I'm telling you? See, if you notice, right, everything, whatever test cases we are writing, dependent on how our function is behaving. If you can understand these concepts, right, you will be able to write any test cases. And this is very in-depth what I'm explaining. I'm not sure if most of you are able to understand what I mean by this. See, everything whatever we have written, right, will be dependent on how we have written the function, and based on that we'll be able to create the edge cases also, or what will be our valid use cases. So whenever you're creating a function, right, let's say you should immediately write your test cases or whatever you're doing, you should be able to understand, okay, this is my function, this is the logic, this is what the function is doing, this function is calling that helper, this function is calling that module, or whatever, blah blah. You should be able to write the test cases by yourself. Okay, so I think this is done. Also, let's do one thing, we can also do like this, right? So after this we can also take our spy, and I'm just going to do a restore, mock restore. Okay, so what this is going to do, right, this is going to restore your original method fully. Okay, and this is actually important when you're using a spy. Okay, all right, so this is done. Now if you notice that we also have some 2 more edge cases, and you will be thinking that, okay, how we can handle these errors in our test case, right? So if the discount amount is less than 0, so it is throwing an error. If the final price is less than 0, this is also throwing another error. So I'll show you that how you can do that. So here I'm simply going to do that doesn't call the helper when the function throws early for a negative discount. Okay, so first let's create the spy, and after this what I'll do, right, so I'm just going to take expect, and here what I'm going to do, right, I'm going to call this method, because see, this is our main function, right, that we are calling. So I'll do build price summary, and I'm just going to do here, let's do react, and here I'm just going to pass original price, let's do this one as 1000, and discount amount I'm just going to do minus 13, or let's do minus 50. So now what will happen? Now remember, this is going to do what? So it will come here, immediately it's going to throw a new error. Okay, it will never go here, so that means spy will not be called. So now in that case, here you can do a what, right, you can do a throw. So now you can do what? So you can give this one that, okay, this discounted amount cannot be negative. I hope this is clear. Okay, and now because your function is going to throw this error early, so it will not be getting called, right? So I think we have already discussed previously how you can manage when you we'll test that okay, some method is not being called in jest. Pause the video and try to do by yourself. We have done multiple times, so you have to do expect format currency spy, and then what you'll do, not, right, dot not dot to have been called, and then you're going to do a mock restore. So I'll do format currency dot mock restore. Alright, so save this, and then if you just run this, so it will getting passed, and see, notice what will happen. If I do this on positive, it's going to fail, right, that's it. So now this is done. The same thing you can do for what, right? You can also do for this also, final price also. So if the final price is less than 0, then, but how you're going to do that? See, this is where you have to understand that how you can write all those test cases. So how you can make your final price negative? Simple question. So whenever you have to write that test case, you have to pass the original price as, let's say, 100, discounted price I'm going to pass as 200. So what will happen? 100 minus 200 will become minus 100. So minus 100 is means what? Final price is less than 0. So that means this condition will satisfy. So this is going to throw error. So it is not going to call this. Simple, right? So what I mean that if I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it here, and I'm simply doesn't call the helper when the function throws for a negative final price. So that means simply we need to handle here that okay, I'm passing my main price, actual price, original price as 200, but I'm passing my discounted price as 500. It's not possible, right? Your discount should not be more than this also only. So in that case, this will be in positive. So I'll do 500. So in that case, what will happen, right? It's going to give final price will not be negative. And the reason is very simple, because 200 minus 500 will become minus 300. Okay. So this is what it will be. So if you save this, and if you just run it, you'll see that all will be passed. Okay, and if you can run all the test cases we have done so far, all right, and you can see that this is done. So this is how you can do what you can use, make use of spy. Now you see we have learned jest.function, jest.mock, jest.spyOn. Do this, create some 2-3 more examples, okay, for each and every type. For function create 2, for mock create 2, for spy create 2, and try to see the difference and try to create. I can guarantee if you don't practice, okay, let's say you watch this video and stop it, I don't know how much you want to bet on, and pretty much you'll not be able to write test cases when you'll be actually writing the test cases in a course. Let's say we're working in a team where you have a very complex project, you will not be able to write test cases. I can guarantee, 100% guarantee. So what I mean by this is that you should not be limited to what you're learning here. You have to do a lot of practice. Also, you have to practice without relying too much on AI tools. Until unless you are too much stuck, so go to the official documentation and then try to write by yourself. At the end, the last option will be go to AI tools, don't copy paste the exact thing and then ask that okay, give me the test cases. Then what is the point of learning? Do back and forth. This is what I usually do, right? So for us, let's see, if you ask me today that okay Sangam, you so I don't have that much experience on ASP.NET, I'm just giving you one example, and if you ask me that okay, you have to learn ASP.NET, what I'm going to do, right? I'm not going to learn everything from AI. So everything in the AI means I'm not going to tell that okay, give me every code and then I'll just copy paste and I'll think that I have learned this. I'll do back and forth. So I'll go to AI tools, I'll read blogs, go to official documentation, maybe buy some courses also, because courses are actually very helpful. Okay, so what I mean by this, do practice, create 2 function for this, 2 function for jest.mock and 2 for spyOn. Okay, function in the sense means create some more example here and then try to practice, and also try to cover multiple edge cases. Okay, and see that how you are able to do it. You have to practice at least 1 month. Okay, I'm going to guarantee if you do 1 month properly, you will be able to know or understand the concepts very easily, that you will be able to write test cases in a big project also. So with this, now let's move on to the next one. Alright, so now let's start another very important concept, and that is that how you are going to write test cases whenever you will be working with promises or async await. So you can see that what we have, right? So we just have a normal function. We are receiving the course ID as input, and then you're simply doing a API call. This API call can be any URL, right? If it is failed, so we are throwing an error, or else we are getting the data back, and at the end we are returning the title. So let's see how you're going to work with async related test cases. Okay, so I'm just going to copy these, create another test file here. So I'll do .test.ts. Now remember one thing I wanted to mention, that when you will work with async, right, testing actually matters a lot. Okay, it can be during your API calls, whether you're doing a DB query, reading files, right, queue operations, there can be a lot of things, or especially let's say we're working with authentication and everything, so you need to implement authentication checks also. Now here how we can basically implement these test cases for this async related task. Now there are two important patterns that you need to understand. Okay, so I'm trying to explain this one very simple way. The first one will be you are going to do something like await, and then you have some async function. Okay, this can be any async function that you are working with. So this is the first one. When you are going to use this, when you want to get the final resolved value. So this is the first pattern. The second pattern will be when you have to handle the rejection. So I'll do await, so let's await, and I'll do expect, and then here again you have some async function, right, and let's say this async function is going to reject something, right, so I'll do reject, and then we have discussed this one previously, to throw, and then you want to throw a particular error, and this you want to use when you are expecting the promise. So you are expecting the promise to fail. Okay, so now let's see what are the things that we need to test in this particular function. So these also we need to understand. Before that, we also need to understand what actually this function is doing. Now remember, I think most of you will be able to understand this one very easily. This is doing a API call and whatever, but still I wanted to explain why, because so that you will understand the pattern, that how we need to handle all of this in our real code. So first, what actually this is doing a validation. This is the first thing, that validating the input. It's doing a fetch call. Okay, it's checking if the response is okay or not, and at the end it's reading the JSON. So you can see this is what, and it's returning the title back. Okay, now these simple function will give you multiple test cases that you can write. For example, success case, when this will be successful, so this will be one test case. There can be possibility that HTTP failure happens, so that will be another test case. There can be network failure use case. There can be invalid input case. Okay, so let's say I'm giving a course ID and I'm passing the course ID as a string. Also there can be sometimes bad JSON shape case also. So these many test cases we can write here. Now one thing I wanted to mention, when you are going to work with this external API calls and everything, right, in unit test case, when you are going to write, you should not make a real external API calls, and the reason is very simple. I think we have already discussed this one in some of the other concepts that we have discussed previously, that it becomes slow, unstable, and also it's not in our control, right? And when you are going to write repeatable tests, right, that is also bad practice. Instead, what you need to do, so we are going to mock the fetch, and this is very important concept. So let's see how you can actually work with this. So first, what I'm going to do, right, I'll do describe, and I'm just going to do external API call. Okay, so I'll do external API call, and first what we need to do here, first we need to take a beforeEach. Okay, so what actually this beforeEach going to do? Now here we are going to replace a global fetch function with a jest.mock before every test. So before we are going to run or execute every test, we are going to replace our global fetch function to a jest.mock. I think we have already discussed the jest.mock logic here. Okay, what this jest function is going to do, so jest function what usually do, it's going to create a fake function, right, and that is in our control, means we will be able to handle this. So how we are going to do that? So we have global, and this global is going to give you a fetch, right? So you have a global.fetch, and this I want to make this global.fetch as a jest.function, and here we are going to make this one as jest.mock. Okay, so this is the first thing I wanted to do. Also there is another concept, we have afterEach. So this also I'm going to explain later. So afterEach is going to do what? We are going to clear all the mocks. So what clear all mocks is going to do, is going to remove all your old call history from your jest mocks. Okay, so before each and then you have after each. So here what we are going to do, we are simply just going to do jest, and I'll do clear all mocks. Okay, so you want to clear everything. All right, So this is done. So first one will be, as I already mentioned, what will be the first valid scenario. The valid scenario will be when you are passing correct course ID. So this is valid, so this will cross. You are doing a fetch API call, so fetch API is also successful and everything goes correct. So what will happen at the end? You are going to get the title back. So this will be your valid scenario when this is successful. Okay, so now let's see how we are going to do that. So first I'm just going to do a test and I'll do returns the course title when the API call successful. Okay, so how you are going to do that? Now here what we have, first of all you have to understand that we are handling the success path. Now here what we need to use, right, we need to use something called mock result value once. Now this is another very important method that you need to understand. What this mock result value once that we are going to use now, this is going to do what, right? So when we are going to do the fetch API call, so fetch will be called one time, that is going to return a promise, right, and that is going to resolve to this fake response object. Okay, so see how we are going to do that. So what I'm going to do, right, I'm just going to do global.fetch as jest.mock, and here I'm just going to do a mock result value once, and what I'm going to return, I'm going to return a OK. So this will be true, right, and you can see that we are simply checking that if the response.ok is true or not. So it's going to return the OK as true, and then what you need to return, see, very simple. When you're doing the actual API call, what usually happen? So you usually get the data from your API, right, whatever API that you are calling. Your response.ok will be true, and at the end you're going to get some data, right? So this data can be, let's say you're getting ID, title, product details, blah blah, it can be anything. So that means you're getting a response.json, right? So that means what we need to do right here, so whenever we want to use this mock result value once, we only want to include the fields that our function actually needs. I'm not sure if I'm able to explain. This is very important. Okay, what I mean. So if you notice that here, if in the response you're getting response.json, so this JSON is one of the field that I need. So then I need to include that JSON field here, right? So I need to include this JSON field here. So what will be this? So this will be async, and what I need to return, so this will be the response that I am expecting. So let's say I'm just going to give you a simple example. One person is working on an e-commerce website, one person is working on a SaaS website. That e-commerce guy is getting product title, product details, product price, product cart, product checkout information. The SaaS person is getting admin info, admin sales and everything. So based on what you're receiving from your API, you need to mention all those fields here. So for example, if the e-commerce guy is getting product title, so you're going to get the title is product 1, and let's say if the SaaS guy is writing the test case, so he's going to do admin details, and this will be this. You're getting that, what I mean. So I'm just resolving the value that I'm expecting from that API call. So here this will be ID, so let's say I'm expecting ID, and I'm also expecting a title here. So this is what I'm going to receive from my API call. So I'll do Node.js Testing Full Course. Okay, so this is very simple, and this is going to do our job. So now what we need to do, right, so we need to get our result. Okay, so I'm just going to get result, so do const result, and this result will be await, and then we are going to call our method. So to fetch course title, so to fetch course title, and we want to pass a value here which will be 1. Okay, and I think this is done, and I think I missed this one. We need to use async here. Okay, so now this is going to do our call. Remember one thing you have to understand: when your function is async, you need to use async await here, right? Because our function is itself async. So now what you're going to do, we need to expect our result. So we do the API call, so you're doing the API call, and at the end we are going to get what? Data.title. So something we are getting, right? So this is our data.title that we are going to receive. So now what I'm going to simply do that, okay, now I'm expecting my result, so I'll do expect result, and this result to be what? This title, right? This is the title. So we see what we're doing, we're doing a mock implementation, right? A fake thing. We are creating a fake thing, and we are telling Jest that, okay, do a global mock this global dot fetch, right, and you mock resolve the value with OK will be true, that means your API call is successful. And in the JSON data, return with the ID and the title. This title is depend on what we are receiving here. If you are working in e-commerce, that part I already mentioned, you are receiving a product title, so you have to change this one to product title. Maybe you are receiving 10 fields, you have to include 10 fields here. Okay, so this will be 2B and this will be your Node.js testing full course. So this is what you are expecting here. Also, we want to verify that whether our fetch is getting called one time or not. How you can do that? So you have to apply all the concept that you have learned in the previous section, then only you'll be able to know. So see here, if you want to do this, that okay, global.fetch, so what you have to use, to have been called times, and this will be 1. I hope this is clear. Now also we need to do another very important thing, that we also need to verify that it is actually getting called with the exact title that we expect. So this is the title that we are doing here. Now this is also very important in whenever you're working with async test. Okay, remember I already mentioned this, so we do not care about the result, but we have to care about whether this is getting called and the response is getting built successfully or correctly or not. So how we can do that? So I'm simply going to do expect this global.fetch, and I'm just going to do .to have been called, and you have to pass this. So we'll do copy this, paste it here, and what will be this course ID? So this will be courses /1. Okay, what I'm doing wrong here? To have been called with. So api.example /courses/1. Why 1? Because we are passing 1 here. Okay, and this is done. So this will be your success scenario. I hope this is clear, right? That what actually you have done here. Now let's see if this is working or not. Okay, so I'm just going to clear this. Let's copy the relative path. Okay, we are doing that global.fetch.mock result value once. It's not a function. Okay, we need to make this one function, that's why. Okay, so now let's save this and run it again, and you can see that this is getting passed. Okay, so I think this is done. So this will be the first test cases that we need to handle. Next will be when something wrong happened. Let's say if this response.ok is false, so that means we need to reject with an error because we're throwing an error, right? So let's how we are going to do that in the next part. Okay, so now moving to the next one, which will be the error use case, right? So here I'm just going to do rejects with an error when the API returns non-OK response, something like this. So first, once again, what we need to do, we need to actually see that how we are going to manage to explain jest that okay, this time the API call is unsuccessful. So how we are going to do that? So here I'm just going to do okay, global.fetch, the same thing as jest.mock, and here you are going to do mock result value once, and now this time what will be your OK? So this will be false, right? And then you're going to take the JSON, so JSON will be async, and this time you are not going to return any response. Why? Because let's consider your API got failed with 404 or 500 error. So you're going to return a message, right? So you can see that this is what you're doing. If this is not false, based on that we're going to return a message. So message will be something like not found. That's it. Now here what we need to check, as I already mentioned, that we usually check it using this format, right? That await expect some function dot rejects dot to throw. So now what you're going to do simply, so after this I'm simply going to do await, so I'll do expect, and then you have the method. So what is our method? So our method is fetch course title, so I'll do fetch course title, I will pass maybe 20, and this is going to now reject, so I'll do rejects. Also you need to take async here, so I'll do rejects, and then you're going to do what? To throw. And then what you're simply doing here, you're doing fail to fetch course. So this is what we need to do. So we'll do fail to fetch course. So this is done, but this is completed, not yet. Why? See, even though your API got failed, still you need to do the API call, right? Because if you don't do the API call, how will you be able to understand whether your API got successful or failed? So that means we still need to check this, that if this global.fetch is getting called or not. This is simple enough to understand, that we still need to check that if this global.fetch dot to have been called times, and this will call one time, and also need to check that if our API is getting called or not. So you're going to copy this and then paste it here, and then you have to check what we are passing here, 20. So these will be 20, and this is done. So if you save this and let's see, if I run once again, you see that both will be passed. Okay, that's it. So I think this is another use case. Now also you can do what, right? You can also do the same thing using a network error, that let's say some network error happen. So in that case, how we are going to do that? So instead of doing a mock result value once, right, what you need to do, you need to do a mock rejected value once, because that can be a lot of things happen, right? Let's say network outage, or maybe some DNS related issue that will happen very rarely, but that can happen. Okay, why you have to use mock rejected value once? Because when your API call doesn't happen and let's say some network related issue happen, so in that case you will not be able to return a normal object, something like this, right? So how you can do this? So let me just show you quickly because it's important. So I'm just going to do rejects if any network related issue happens, something like this. And what I mean by this, that you can't use, so you have to do the same, only that global.fetch, okay, as jest.mock, and this time you have to do mock rejected value once. Okay, because you can't return okay false because your API is not getting called, right? Some network related issue is there. So how you can reject once, right? You have to reject once using new error. So you have to pass a network error, something like this, network error. Okay, and then also here what we can do, so after this, once this is done, so I'm simply going to do await. I think I haven't used async again, I'll always do this mistake. So you have to take async and you're simply going to do await expect. So let's say I'll do fetch course title with 13 or 11, whatever you want to give, and you're going to do rejects dot to throw, and you're going to pass the network error. And also you need to do the API call here also. Copy this, paste it here, and this will become 11. Save this, and you can see that this will work and it will pass. Okay, the point what you need to understand here, and that is this part, that instead of doing a mock result value once, we are doing a rejection because this is a network related issue. So I think this is done. Okay, very important. So we need to do one more case. Consider that your API got successful, okay, but in that response you don't have the data in the sense the title is not present. This also can happen, right? So see how we are going to do this. So I'm just going to do here test, and I'm just going to do rejects when the API is successful, or API response is successful, but in data the title is missing. So here also again, now this time I'm going to take async. So we have to take async, and now again we'll do global.fetch as jest.mock, and you'll do mock result value once, and what will pass, right, will do okay will be true, and in the JSON we'll do async, but this time I only want to return the ID of 4. I don't want to take the title. Okay, this can happen. This is very rarely, but this can happen also. So here what I'll do await, and I'll do expect. What I'm doing now, oh, I have to do outside. So expect, and then I'll do fetch course title, and then I'm going to pass 4, and you're going to do dot rejects dot to throw, and you're going to do course title is missing, something like this. The course title is missing. Okay, and also again you have to check these two things. We have this one, these two. So you'll copy this and you'll paste it here, and this will become 4. Okay, this will be only once because we are calling with 4, and this is done. So now let's run this and see if this is happening, working or not. all right, and this is going to work. So now I think with this part is completed. The main thing you need to understand that how we are creating this global.fetch as a mock, and based on that we are resolving the result, the response, and then we are getting, and based on that we are writing the test cases. Okay, so with this is very, very important. Try to practice. Once again, I'm repeating the same thing again and again, but you need to practice. Okay, create some more advanced async example and try to write test cases. So with this, now let's move on to the next one. All right, so now I think we are almost at the end of this part 1. So we also need to cover what is the concept of before each and after each in details. But before that, I wanted to write one more test cases for this async phase that I missed out. Okay, and that will be, so if you go here, right, you will notice that when we are passing this course ID, which is the number, if this is less than or equal to 0, so we need to throw in one error. Now why actually you need to write this? Because if this is the case, right, you will see that your API will not be called. So this is a valid scenario that we need to cover. So what I mean by this, so let's quickly create this test case here. So I'm just going to do test, and this will be throws error immediately for an invalid course ID, and doesn't call fetch at all. Okay, so these also we need to cover. I think these we should have covered before only, but yeah, this we need to do it. And also let's do this one as async. So what I mean by this, right, so simply you just do as await, and I'm just going to do expect, and I'll do fetch course title, and see what I'll do. I'm going to pass 0, or you can also do -1 also. Let's say if I do -5, something like this. So I'll do here 0, and then what we'll do, right, this is going to throw in one error, right? So you're just going to reject immediately, and you're going to throw one error. So we'll do throw, and what we need to return, so you're going to return course ID must be greater than 0. So this is the error that we are returning. Okay, all right, so this is the first thing we need to do. And once this is done, right, so after this, very, very important, we need to do expect global dot fetch. Now this will not be called. So again, we need to do what? Whenever we want to check opposite options, we need to do not. I think this we have already discussed, and this will be to have been called. Okay, so now let's save this, and if you run this, right, you'll see that this is going to work. All right, and also if you let's say pass 10 here, right, so you'll see that you're going to get error because this is a valid use case. So in that case, this is going to fail. So this is one more use case that I wanted to cover. All right, so I think this is done. Let's run once again all the tests, and we'll see if everything is working or not. Everything is passed. Now let's end this one with another important concept, and that is before each and after each. So let's go to this file, and also let's create one more file here, and I'm going to do test. Let's create .test.ts. So first let's see what actually this is doing. Now you see that this is a very, very simple file, and you'll see that this is the best example that I've taken to explain this concept clearly, because I've seen so many students actually find this difficulty to understand the concept of before each and after each. And if you watch this particular one, right, I can guarantee you'll be able to understand this one very, very clearly. We already have a saved lesson array, okay, and I've kept this one intentionally very, very simple. Okay, and these data we are keeping in a variable outside the function. You can see that. So what this means, that the data is going to stay in your memory after the function finishes. So whatever function finishes, your data is going to saved in the memory, right? So what actually called, these usually call as state or module level state. Okay, now here we have add function. If this is empty, we are going to return, or else we are going to push. For get, we are going to get all the lesson. For lesson count, we are going to get the count, and for clear, we are going to clear it. Very, very simple. But that is not the point. The point is how we are going to understand that what actually this before each or after each usually does. And you'll see that so many places, I think almost in every file, you're going to see this before each and after each. People usually use this, and there is a reason for it. Now see why these hooks matters. The first one is consider this example only, that you are adding one particular lesson, or you are adding any data. Now let's say you are adding one particular data. So test 1 adds data, and your test 2 runs later. Just listen carefully what I'm doing. Now what is happening, right? Test 2 still see the old data from test 1. Okay, now this can happen, right? test2 now can pass or fail for the wrong reason. I'm not sure if you're getting what I mean. So I'm in my test data, I'm adding a data and I'm running the test2 immediately. I'm not doing any cleanup or anything like that or any reset. So what will happen, right? Your test2 either will be able to see the old data from your test1. So this can fail, right? Consider in test2 we have a condition that these functions should be running one time. But your test1 is doing something and then your test2, instead of running one time, you are getting the value as 2. So your test2 is running 2 times. So it will fail. Right? So this, you know what this actually called, this is called as test pollution. Okay, this is called as test pollution, or you can consider as maybe if I want to put it right, maybe a state leakage, something like that. Okay, so this we should not do it. So that means what we need to do, we need to ensure that every test we want to write, it should start clean. Okay, this is the first thing. And one test, so let's say you have two tests, one test should not change another test result. Very, very important. So one test should not change another test result. Extremely important thing, and you'll see that how much frustrating this can be if you don't use this before each after each properly, right? That doesn't mean that you have to use everywhere. You have to know that where you want to use this, and you'll see that one test case might fail 100 times and you will be frustrated. So you need to know all of these things, and this is where this before each and after each is going to help you. So let's understand that what before each actually does. Before each is going to run before every test. So as the name suggests, so before each is going to run before every test. So this will be run before every test. Okay, so what this actually does, right? So let's say you have a 5 tests, and now before each start running one time, your test1 run, and then before each will run again, your test2 will run, then again before each will run third time, your test3 will run, then again fourth time it will run, then your test4 will run, and at the end it's going to end with the 5th run, and then your test5 will run. So this will be the process. So let's say you want to reset your in-memory state, you want to create a phrase object, or you want to prepare for mock. So in that case, before each is going to run. What after each is going to do, so I think I don't have to explain, by the name only you'll be able to understand. This is going to run after every test, right? So after every test means this is also going to run 5 times only, but it will be opposite. So you'll do test1, then after each will run test2, then again after each will run test3, then again it will run for the third time test4, again it will run 4th time test5, and then at the end it's going to run 5 times. Okay, so this is the difference. Here also what you can do, right? Clear memory state, restore your spies. Let's say you're using some jest.spy, you want to reset some mocks, so in that case you can use this after each. Okay, now if you want to explain in one line, let's say you're giving an interview, before each will be you are preparing for a clean starting point or fresh starting point. After each will be you're cleaning up after your test is running, or after the test is done. So this is what you're doing, right? Let's say T2 is running, so T2 will run fresh because you are running a before each, and for after each your T3 also run fresh because you are running after each after test 2. Okay, so this will be the difference. So let's say how you can do that. So now let's say if I'm just going to take a describe and I'll do before each after each, whatever I want to take, concept, and here, so let's take, so first what I want to take, I want to take a before each, and before each going to do what? Now let's see if you are able to understand that if I will give you this particular example, what before each and after each is going to do here. Let's see if you can do it, because I clearly mentioned that before each and after each in one way or another way is going to do what? It's going to clean something. So what function is doing a clean here? So clear lesson, right? So this is what we need to do. So that means what simply I'm doing, that every time I'm going to run a particular test, I want to clear my lesson so that my lesson string will become empty. So this will become empty. So when my next test will run, this will automatically start fresh. Okay, I have to import this also. Alright, so this is similar way your after each also is going to do the same here. Now this is a simple example, so that is the reason I'm taking in both the cases this clear lesson, but this depends on the functionality that you are doing here. Okay, so now in larger projects, what you usually do, so when you are using afterEach, right, so let's say you want to restore your spies, so you're using jest.spyOn, you want to clear some mocks or clear some resources, so in that case you can use those for your afterEach. Now let's say I'm just going to write some particular test. Now see, I'm just going to do test, and I'm going to do start maybe with an empty lesson list in array in every fresh start maybe. Okay, so if this is the case, what will happen, because we are running beforeEach and afterEach, right? So beforeEach is going to do what? It's going to clear the lesson. So that means what we can expect? We can expect that our saved lesson will always be empty before every test will run. So what we can do, right, we can simply do expect, and I have this get lesson, so get lesson will give me empty result. So I'll do get lessons, and what will be this? So this will be 2 equal, and this will be empty array. Very simple. And the count will be also 0. So I'll do this, and I'll do get lesson count, and this will be 2b, because you need to use 2b here, and this will be 0. Very simple, right? So now this is one very simple example. So let me run this. It will run definitely. So I'll copy the relative path, do npm run test. Okay, so now let's write one more, and you'll understand what actually we are doing here. So I'm just going to do now that add one lesson and increase the count. Okay, so how you can do that? So you're going to call the add lesson, and I'm just going to do react. Okay, so this is what you're doing. So react.js, and now what I can do, simply I'm just going to do get lesson to equal, and this will be what? This will be react.js, because we have added only one lesson, correct? And what will be the count? So count will become 1, so this will become 1, and very simple. So here what will happen, right? So when you are doing some kind of manipulation, let's say one particular test is doing something, so it's adding a lesson, and next time you want to test something different, so that next test should start with empty lessons. So now let's see, if you are not using beforeEach or afterEach, what will happen, right? Your third test or whatever new test you are going to start, it will always get the one lesson that you have already added in the previous test step. You're getting, right, what I mean? So this is what this particular step is doing. Very simple. So now what I can do, right, I think this should be fine, or maybe let's do one more. Maybe let's add multiple. So I'm just going to do adds multiple lessons, something like this, and then I'm just going to do here add lesson, and I'll do HTML, copy this, and I'll do CSS and JavaScript, something like this, JS. So in that case this will be, so let's copy these two, and I'll do here, so this will become HTML, CSS and JS, and this will be 3, right? So let's say if I just run it, okay, now what I'll do, right, simply I'm just going to, maybe let's do one thing, let's remove this, okay, and let's run once again, and that's it. So now you can see that what is happening here, you are getting React.js also. Fantastic, right? And you can see I don't have to even explain now, you simply understand what is happening here. So what is happening, that you are adding a lesson here in this React.js. So this particular array, or this, now this get lesson has what? One lesson already added. So when you are running the next test, you are adding 3, it also receiving the React.js from the previous test, right? So this is where you need beforeEach and afterEach. Very simple to understand, and I don't have to explain much here. You can clearly see what is happening here, and you can see if I just remove these, right, and run once again, and you'll see that this will pass. Okay, so this is what is happening here. So now remember, you have to be very careful that when you're going to use what, and this will come from practice. No one can teach you, like there is nothing blueprint that okay, this is what you have to follow. You need practice, you need to understand the situation, and based on that you're going to create. So with this, I think we have completed almost most of the important things that we need to know. As I already mentioned that this will be the part 1, right? And if this video get good likes and comments, I'm going to create part 2 where I'm going to cover the API testing and also I'm going to create an integration testing video also. So with this, that's all for this particular video. I will see you in my next video. Till then, good luck and peace.